As I relaxed, an announcement echoed through the cabin. "If there is a doctor on board, please come forward." It was the kind of urgent announcement you'd only expect to hear in a drama. Feeling uneasy, I stayed seated and noticed a woman who had been sitting beside me earlier walking hurriedly down the aisle. Then, as if noticing me, she turned and approached, her face on the verge of tears. "You're a doctor, aren't you?" I widened my eyes in complete surprise. "My name is Mark Williams. I'm 32 years old. Right now, I'm aboard a flight, heading for a getaway at a resort spa to unwind from daily stress. After boarding, I stored my carry-on luggage in the overhead bin. When I heard a soft voice. Turning, I saw a petite, charming woman holding her ticket and staring at me. "Oh, sorry. Am I in your way? Please, go ahead." Thinking she was headed further down, I stepped aside, but she shook her head. "No, this is my seat, right next to yours." She showed me her ticket, marked 12E. "Oh, then I should sit first. I'm 12F by the window." "Want me to stow your bag?" I asked, and she tilted her head slightly. "Really, but it's no problem." As she hesitated, an older man behind her greeted me warmly. The woman puffed her cheeks at him. "Grandpa, stop causing trouble." Ignoring her protests, I quickly placed her bag in the overhead compartment. "Thank you." Being tall, this is an easy task for me. "It's nothing." With that, I took my seat by the window. Since the aisle was getting crowded, it was better to sit quickly. The woman timidly murmured, "Excuse me," as she took her seat beside me. The older man sat on the aisle seat, grumbling. I wanted the window seat, only to be gently scolded by the woman. "Would you like to switch seats?" I offered, but the woman quickly shook her head, repeatedly apologizing, leaving me to focus on my paperback. But for some reason, I could feel her glancing at me now and then. Did she want to say something? Maybe I should have just sat down without helping with the luggage. Perhaps reacting to her grandfather's complaint had been a mistake. It seemed my gesture of kindness made her feel obligated. I seemed to tend to overthink things. I pulled out my eye mask and put it on. Though I'd planned to enjoy the in-flight soup service, I decided to take a nap instead. I only intended to sleep briefly, but loud voices pierced through my subconscious. I removed my mask and checked my watch. 40 minutes had passed. Oh, I slept straight through. Startled, I stared at the mask in my hand. "Not like this is work." I sighed inwardly and glanced to my side. Both the woman and the older man were gone. Perhaps they'd gone to the lavatory together. They seemed close. As I sat there, an announcement broke through my thoughts. "If there is a doctor on board, please come forward." The urgency in the voice was something straight out of a movie. I glanced around, but none of the passengers seemed inclined to stand up. Still feeling uneasy, I fixed my gaze forward, remaining in my seat. Then I saw the woman who had been sitting nearby walking down the aisle with a panicked expression. Before I could process it, she turned to me with tears brimming in her eyes and spoke directly to me. "You're a doctor, aren't you?" I widened my eyes in shock. "What?" Confused and unable to grasp the situation, I responded awkwardly. "You work at Boston General Hospital, Dr. Williams, right? Please help me. I'm begging you." She accurately named my former workplace, leaving me bewildered. The surrounding passengers began to murmur. Sensing the tension, I quickly tried to explain. "Well, actually, I quit. I'm not a doctor anymore." Hearing my words, the woman's eyes welled up with tears, and her expression turned desperate. I couldn't just ignore someone looking like that. "I'm not heartless," With everyone's eyes on me, staying seated and doing nothing wasn't an option. "All right, I'll just take a quick look." As I stood up, she let out a tearful, "Thank you. Please, this way." She quickly walked ahead, leading me down the aisle. I followed her. When we arrived, I saw her grandfather lying down, struggling to breathe in shallow gasps. 2 flight attendants perked up at my arrival, but, "Sorry, I don't have anything to prove I'm a doctor. I also resigned recently. Is there anything I can do to help?" My admission caused the flight attendants to exchange uneasy glances. I knew they couldn't let me use the onboard medical kit without proper credentials. Their expressions confirmed my suspicion, so I turned my attention to the elderly man. "Can you hear me?" "Hello." Unsure of what to say, I glanced at the woman. She seemed to understand and stammered, Johnson, Leonardo." Quick on her feet, she provided his name. "Good, that's a start. Leonardo. Can you hear me? Are you in pain?" Leonardo gave a weak nod. I loosened his clothing slightly and checked his pulse. It must be painful. It was rapid, and his skin felt cold. He was gasping, opening and closing his mouth as if desperate for air. An idea struck me, and I grabbed his leg. His reaction confirmed my hunch. Using oxygen would have been ideal, but for now, calming his breathing took priority. "Leonardo, try to breathe slowly, as slow as you can. That's it." While giving instructions, I massaged his legs. They were slightly swollen, and when I pressed down, the indentation didn't immediately return. There wasn't much else I could do at the moment. Praying silently for his recovery, I continued massaging his legs, and eventually his breathing eased. Leonardo raised his hand slightly and exhaled softly. "Thank you." I exhaled as well, relieved. "Good. For now you should be all right. Please go straight to a hospital when we land." I was deeply relieved it hadn't escalated further. The woman expressed her gratitude repeatedly, though she didn't need to be so formal. Fortunately, his condition stabilized enough that we could return to our seats. The flight attendants stayed nearby, ready to assist if needed. He had recovered enough to massage his own foot and was moving it slightly. Seeing this, the woman gave a heartfelt "thank you." Once again, "Thank you so much." I gestured to stop her. "No, really. It's enough. There's no need to thank me repeatedly. I didn't even do anything major, so it's honestly embarrassing." Hearing this, she looked slightly troubled. Sensing that her gratitude still felt incomplete, I decided to change the topic. "By the way, why did you?" I hesitated, and she smiled gently. "You helped me back then as well." "Oh, I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Angela Johnson. About 6 months ago, you helped my niece." Then, she began to explain the story. Angela lived in a small town about a 2-hour flight from Boston, where her sister Lena resided. 6 months ago, Lena was about to have her second child in Boston. Since Lena's husband was abroad for infertility treatments, Angela stayed in Boston for a month to help with her 3-year-old niece and care for Lena post-delivery. Then the accident happened. It was right after Lena had gone into labor and headed to the maternity hospital. While Angela was washing dishes after dinner, her 3-year-old niece fell off the couch during a brief moment of inattention. The fall wasn't from a great height, but the landing was unfortunate. She landed face first and cut her lower lip with her teeth. Blood poured from her lower lip, and Angela panicked. She called the hospital Lena had mentioned for emergencies and was told to bring the child immediately. I was the one who greeted them at the hospital, working in the emergency department at the time. Hearing this story, I smiled wryly. "So that's what you mean by helping." "It was just my job. Nothing extraordinary." Angela smiled softly. That might be true, but at that moment, when I ran into the hospital, feeling utterly desperate, you looked like an god to me. An exaggerated claim. You took a quick look at the wound and asked me whether we should stitch it or not. I had no idea what to do. If we didn't, she'd be in pain for days and struggle to eat. If we did, it would hurt initially, but the procedure would make it easier for her. I held my head in my hands. Far from an god, I had given her a cruel choice. Yet Angela was smiling as she reminisced. I couldn't decide back then. I wasn't her parent. Lena was in labor and unavailable, and her husband was overseas. It felt like her fate rested entirely on my decision, and it terrified me. So I asked you, what would you do if she were your child? Apparently, I had answered without hesitation. I'd stitch it. Of course, I would. Even now, I'd give the same answer. Stitches will leave a much cleaner scar. Angela nodded at my words. You said the exact same thing back then. However, she admitted she hesitated upon hearing that the procedure would be challenging. She worried about being a burden. Then you smiled and said, "Don't worry. We're professionals. You can trust us." Embarrassing. It's nothing during work hours, but hearing it sober feels utterly mortifying. Seeing my ears turn red, Angela giggled softly. I felt really reassured. You helped me so much back then too, she said, expressing her gratitude once more. Well, it was just my job. But you remembered, huh? Feeling a little embarrassed, I asked her that. Angela pointed at the small table in front of the seat. Following her gaze, I saw the sleep mask I had been using earlier. Clearly printed on it was my name, Mark Williams. My face turned red. It's for naps. Everyone has similar ones, so we have to put our names on them. But normally, people don't remember the names of her doctors, right? I said nervously. Angela hesitated for a moment before muttering, "Should I say it?" That small murmur gave me a clue. My name matched that of a famous person. It wasn't always this way. When I was young, my dad passed away, and my mom remarried, changing my last name. Having the same name is one thing, but even if I stay quiet, people say my demeanor resembles his. When I saw you today, I thought maybe, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. When I saw the name on your sleep mask, I was sure I was going to speak to you after you woke up. But then Grandpa had that incident. I smiled wryly. Well, thanks to you remembering me, I could help a little. I don't carry my medical license around, and my credentials and old workplace business cards were left in the bag I used for commuting. Oh, but since I quit, I wouldn't have been able to use the card anyway, I explained. Angela looked a little disappointed. Why did you quit? You're such an amazing doctor. The high praise made me a bit uncomfortable. Oh, no. It's more like I wasn't cut out for it. I had wanted to save lives, so I became a doctor. I joined the IT to be closer to life and death situations. But the grueling workload began to take its toll on my heart. Every day brought split-second life or death decisions, where one wrong move could have grave consequences. On top of that, the hospital director was oppressive, quick to scold over any mistake. Eventually, I grew weary of that life. So I left medicine. I thought I'd take a break and rejuvenate myself. That's why I'm headed to a spa in the city right now. As I said that, Angela looked like she had something on her mind. Have you already decided where to stay? She asked, tilting her head. I've got the first night booked, but I'm still figuring out the rest. That city has so many great resort spas, doesn't it? The city had numerous resort spas and accommodations, and I was undecided about where to stay. I thought about visiting various places and settling on one I liked for a few days. Basically, I had no real plan. Angela blushed a little before saying, "Then, why don't you stay at our guest house? We'd love to have you as our guest, as a way to thank you." "Right, Grandpa." She turned to her grandfather, solidifying the offer. I hesitated but realized that Angela's family's guest house was in the very city I was heading toward. It felt like fate. After parting ways with Angela and her family at the airport, I headed to my hotel for the first night. The resort spa was fantastic, offering a breathtaking view and a spacious, luxurious environment. The next day, Angela came to pick me up from the hotel, and we headed straight to the guest house owned by her parents. Leonardo had undergone tests at the hospital afterward, but it seemed there were no significant issues. The doctor explained that a small blood clot had temporarily caused breathing difficulties, but it likely dissolved during the treatment, which brought relief to Angela. After an hour-long drive, we arrived at Angela's parents' guest house. "Wow, this guest house looks incredibly luxurious." The words slipped out naturally as I admired the majestic atmosphere of the place. Angela gave a shy smile, clearly pleased by my reaction. "Thank you. This guest house has been in our family since my great-grandfather's time, so it's a bit old in places, but please make yourself comfortable. If you'd like, I can also show you around the area." I hesitated to accept, not wanting to impose, but she insisted. "I'd love to revisit some local spots I haven't been to in a while." And so, she ended up accompanying me. She took me to places that were hard to reach without a car, as well as charming retro-style cafes known only to locals. Her curated tour made me feel quite lucky. Most of all, I found it irresistible how she became increasingly talkative, her enthusiasm revealing just how much she loved her hometown. Standing in front of a small waterfall, Angela took a deep breath. I followed her lead, and breathed deeply too. The crisp, cool air was refreshing. "Ah, it's so calming here. I've been to Boston twice in the past 6 months, and the crowds there were just exhausting." Angela laughed as she spoke. "The first trip was to support Lena after giving birth, and the second was because Leonardo insisted on visiting his grandchildren as soon as possible, with her accompanying him. My parents can't take a break from running the guest house, and Lena, well, she doesn't visit home much due to some issues, so I end up being the one who handles these trips. Not that I mind, I enjoy seeing my nieces and nephews. And honestly, whether I'm here at the guest house or not doesn't make much difference." She smiled wistfully as she said this, a hint of sadness in her expression. "That can't be true. If Lena is in Boston, doesn't that mean you'd be the one to take over?" I asked, and she looked down slightly. "The truth is, Lena was supposed to inherit the guest house. She was trained for it, always treated as the first choice, while I was second. Even now, though I work here, I haven't been taught the basics of being an innkeeper like Lena was. I think maybe they're still waiting for her." Lena had been raised with the expectation of taking over, but after falling in love at her university in Boston, she defied her parents' wishes, got married, and stayed there. However, with her husband's recent relocation for work, without Lena accompanying him, Angela suspected their parents were holding on to hope. So, maybe that's why they haven't taught me anything yet. I found myself at a loss for words. I couldn't understand her parents' feelings entirely, but there was one thing I could say. "If you want to take over, you should tell them directly." Angela's face looked like she was about to cry. "But I might be a burden. And maybe they think I'm not fit to be an innkeeper. That's why they don't want to teach me." I gave her a smile. "Angela, don't you sometimes overthink other people's feelings a bit too much?" Angela tilted her head slightly. On the plane, when I helped her put her luggage in the overhead bin, when she assisted with Leonardo. And when she treated her niece, she always thanked me more than necessary. No matter how many times I told her it wasn't needed, she always expressed her gratitude. You should value your own feelings more, not just others. She gently placed her hand on her chest. My feelings. I smiled softly. If your parents really think you're not suited to be an innkeeper, then prove them wrong. Show them you are. Her eyes widened at my words. Then her cheeks flushed a bright pink. I've never thought of it that way before, but you're absolutely right. Her gloomy expression transformed into one filled with hope, and her newfound brightness lifted my own spirits. I stretched a bit. I need to figure out my own path too. If being a doctor isn't for me, then what is? Though I said it with a positive tone, Angela's face saddened slightly upon hearing it, but I responded with a reassuring smile. Let's both do our best. And with that, we returned to the guest house after the day's sightseeing. Back at the guest house, I relaxed in my room for a bit. To my surprise, the room had a small jacuzzi. It was such a luxurious space. After soaking in the room's jacuzzi, I also enjoyed the spa. The ambience was serene, and everything was immaculately clean, making it a truly refreshing experience. When it was time for dinner, I headed to the restaurant, where Angela greeted me in an evening dress. Mr. Williams, thank you for waiting. Her graceful movements caught my attention. Elegant, modest, yet strikingly beautiful, her features perfectly complemented the dress, and I felt my heart race, trying to mask the quickening of my heartbeat. I smiled. You look amazing in that dress. I only said what I thought, but Angela blushed. Seeing her reaction made my face feel hot too. Her way of serving was nothing short of remarkable. Before I knew it, my eyes kept following her. No matter how busy she got, her composure never wavered. She placed and cleared plates without a sound. If she noticed an empty glass, she politely inquired about refills without being overbearing. She responded seamlessly to guests' questions. I asked her about a fish I had never seen before, and she explained that it was a local river fish, even telling me about its seasonal availability. To say she wasn't fit to be an innkeeper was absurd. She seemed born for it. I felt a sincere desire to support her dream. I ended up staying at the guest house for 2 days. Though they insisted the stay was complimentary, I made sure to pay. Their hospitality more than repaid the kindness I showed Leonardo on the plane, as well as her tour. I considered staying one more day, but found it hard to leave. Even though I know I'll have to leave someday, just imagining walking away from here fills me with a deep, inexplicable sadness. It feels like there's a hole in my heart. Trying to shake off that feeling, I head to the spa. I take in each and every scene, engraving them into my memory as inspiration for the future. As I walk down a deserted hallway during the day only frequented by overnight guests, I spot Angela. She's rearranging the flowers at the entrance. Her complexion seems slightly pale, but when she sees me, her face lights up, and she walks over to me. Then, oh, she lets out a small cry before staggering. Angela. I rush to her side and catch her as she's about to collapse. I'm fine, just a little dizzy. Her vacant eyes and fragmented speech make me uneasy. While supporting Angela, I check her pulse, examine her nails, and look under her lower eyelids. Anemia, maybe. Is there a hospital nearby? When I ask, she shakes her head slightly. The hospital around here closed after the doctor retired. There's one 30 minutes away by car, but I'll be okay now. She presses her head lightly, and I furrow my brow. Don't push yourself. Have you been overdoing it lately? When I ask, Angela gives a faint smile. I may have been trying too hard. Wanted to make a good impression. I sigh softly, but am startled by her next words. For you, Mark. I look at her face. For me. Tears well up in her eyes. You're leaving soon, aren't you? I nod slightly. I had informed her mom, the innkeeper, that I would be leaving after one more day. It's lonely, but I'll keep doing my best. And you, Mark, keep being a great doctor. I was taken aback. I don't know. Being a doctor. Before I could finish, Angela interrupts with a small cry. You're perfect for it. She pulls away from my arms and slowly stands upright. Then she stares straight at me. With my niece, with Grandpa, and now with me. Someone as dependable as you. Giving up on being a doctor. What a waste, right? It's an overestimation. I avert my gaze from her earnest eyes, but her gaze pierces through me. Then she extends her pinky finger. Pinky swear. I'll get my parents' approval and become the innkeeper. So Mark, keep helping so many people as a doctor. Helping people. That was the reason I chose to become a doctor. Amid the stress and challenges, I had lost sight of that purpose. She had reminded me of it. I quietly extend my pinky finger. Years have passed since then. Mark, how is he? Does it look serious? Angela asks me, and I let out an exasperated sigh. No, just too much drinking. It's not alcohol poisoning, but I'll give him N4. Can I use that room over there? When I ask, Angela nods and leads me to the room. Today, Angela called me over to her guest house because a guest had collapsed, so here I am treating him. Well, calling me over isn't much just from next door, really. Though I spent a few more days touring spas after our promise, I couldn't get that place out of my mind. I was worried about Angela, but there was an abandoned clinic in that area, and it stirred something deep within me. When I visited the place again and approached the clinic, I found the grandson of the former doctor tidying up the yard. Although the clinic had been closed for several months, the equipment was still in pristine condition. The former doctor's children and grandchildren hadn't pursued careers in medicine, leaving no one to take over. The grandson explained that the absence of a hospital in the area had become inconvenient for the community. After hearing this, I decided to visit the former doctor, now residing in a care facility about a 30-minute drive away. It was then that I made up my mind. I would work as a doctor in this hospital. I wanted to protect the lives of the local residents, the visiting tourists, and most importantly, Angela. When I told Angela about my decision, she leaped into my arms with joy. Her mom quickly stepped in to remind her to act with decorum. Angela, too, had been talking things over with her parents since then. The sudden decision by her sister Lena, who had always been groomed as the natural successor to the family guest house, caused her parents to reevaluate their assumptions. They realized that it wasn't an obligation for their daughters to take over the guest house just because they were their children. This is not something that should be taken for granted. Their daughters had their own desires and paths to happiness. Angela, who was thriving in her work, also had the right to leave and find happiness elsewhere. With this understanding, they stopped pressuring Angela, especially after Lena's decision to not take over the guest house. Angela, however, stepped forward and expressed her clear desire to continue the family business. From that day, her rigorous training as an innkeeper began, but Angela already had the foundation, as I had seen during my moving experience at her restaurant. Now, even when her mom takes a day off, Angela efficiently manages the guest house. After handling a particularly rowdy guest, I approached Angela. Aldone, what time will you finish today? Angela, who had been wearing her professional innkeeper's expression, softened into a warm, wifely smile at my question. I should be done by 9 p.m. Did you take care of the laundry? I nodded. Of course. I'll whip up some snacks. So how about we have a drink tonight? Her face lit up with excitement at my suggestion. I adored that radiant look of hers. Now my wife, more than anything. With the thought of her delighted expression, I headed back to our home.
Unlimited spa access from now on. How could John keep this a secret? That's just evil. I won't forgive this. It seems that, without my knowledge, my in-laws' place had turned into a luxury hotel. Now I can enjoy the spa every day and eat delicious meals. Just kidding. To think they would use my precious son for their own desires, they've got some nerve. They'd better be ready. My name is Amy. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. I work in the administrative department of a pharmacy. I live with my husband John and our first-grade son Edward. John and I met through a colleague at work. From the moment we first met, John and I just clicked. We quickly became close. It wasn't long before we started dating, and we were married the following year. With my upbeat husband John and lively son Edward, I was leading a life of ordinary happiness. There's another thing that makes me glad I married John. It's having his mother-in-law, Linda, in our lives. Having lost my mother early, I was raised by my father. Linda, who I barely knew as a mother figure, treated me like her own daughter since the start of our marriage. Amy, do you have any plans this Sunday? Why don't you and Edward come over for dinner? She would say, always treating us to delicious meals. When Edward was younger, she was a great support for my parenting struggles. She even helped pick up Edward from daycare when I couldn't leave work. Edward grew very attached to her. Spending Christmas at my in-laws had become a tradition for our family, including Linda. Amy, your mother-in-law really is the best, isn't she? My colleague Emma always listens with an envious look. Actually, it was Emma who introduced me to John. They have been friends since college. Emma, with her bright personality, has many friends. We joined the company together and are close enough to share work frustrations, family matters, and personal issues. The pharmacists and other staff are kind, and the company has excellent benefits. Emma, other colleagues, and I, all with children, continue to work as full-time employees, just as before our pregnancies. I think it's a really great company. Recently, John's been saying he has to work on weekends and isn't home even on his days off. I say, sounding a bit discontented. Are you suspecting him of cheating? John? Cheating? That's laughable. Emma laughs, but it's true that John has been away from home more often. Dad, are you working again today? Edward asks, wanting to play with John. I have to work, sorry, okay? Amy, I'm sorry too. John says, looking apologetic. I couldn't say anything back, feeling proud of John for working hard for our family. Little did I know back then that such dedication would turn into such a terrible betrayal. Working on weekends, rock, paper, scissors. Ugh, the worst. My workplace is usually closed on Sundays and holidays. However, about once a month, we are on duty for the hospital at our gate on Sundays. Accordingly, our pharmacy also opens. It seems that Christmas is our turn this time, and we all played rock, paper, scissors to decide who would work. Unfortunately, I lost. I wanted to spend Christmas at my in-laws. But no choice, I have to do my best. Once Edward started elementary school, I couldn't escape from the PTA, and unfortunately, I lost in rock, paper, scissors again and ended up as an officer. Really, this is just too much. I muttered to myself, only to be chuckled at by the friend sitting next to me. It's not funny, I said to her. She laughed and apologized, saying sorry. This woman is also an officer, and we met at the daycare. Her son Henry and Edward are very close, and our families have become friends. We used to go on trips together, though we've been too busy lately. Her husband Tom is also a kind and gentle person. Her name is Isabella. I call her Henry's mom or Isabella. By the way, Isabella, thanks for playing with Edward in the park last Sunday when I had to work. When I had to work on weekends, John would take care of Edward. Today I played with Henry in the park, Edward told me. When I asked John about it, he said that he ran into Henry and his parents at the park by chance and played together. Really? I asked John, but his vague response frustrated me. By the way, Linda called and said she's looking forward to Christmas. I can't make it, but have fun. I can't go because of work, so it looks like Christmas will be without me this year. Linda sounded very disappointed when I told her I couldn't come. But maybe I'll put John to work and have him do a thorough house cleaning. It's been a while, she said, sounding quite excited about the idea. Feel free to use him as much as you like. I laughed as I talked with Linda. It was close to Christmas when this happened. I was working a late shift that day and had to do some unexpected overtime, so I hurriedly tried to contact John, but couldn't reach him. I ended up calling my son's mobile phone. Mom, are you done with work? Edward answered the phone with a cheerful voice, happy to hear from me. Sorry, Edward. Mom is working late. Can you put Dad on the phone? But Edward said John wasn't there. Wondering where they could be. Hello, Amy? It must be tough working so late. John called and said he's going to be late because of work, Linda said. She told me that while she was preparing dinner at her house, John called her. Sorry, Mom. Amy's on a late shift, and I should get home early, but I have to work overtime. Please help. After saying that, John hung up and couldn't be reached again. I was furious with John's actions. He hadn't contacted me at all, thinking maybe he wouldn't get caught. I rushed home. John still hadn't returned, and at the dinner table were Linda and Edward eating. Linda said she was happy to have dinner alone with her grandson, even though I apologized. I really respect Linda. John came home late that night. Hey, about work. You promised to take care of things when I have a late shift. Can you at least keep that promise? I said quietly. What can I do? It's work. John raised his voice and even suggested that I quit my job or become a part-timer. When John met me, he praised me for working in healthcare. That John, who said such nice things, is no longer here. Our current lifestyle is also thanks to my income. Even though I'm an equal partner to John, he's been doing less housework and recently hasn't been taking care of Edward either. And this guy, probably. Hey, you're not cheating, are you? I looked at John with cold eyes. There's no way. You're overthinking, Amy. He suddenly changed his tone and put his arm around my shoulder. That said it all. John has always tried to appease me like this when he's lying or feeling guilty. How dare he cheat? He better be prepared. I was glad Edward was asleep. I didn't want to show our son such an ugly fight. From then on, we acted normal in front of Edward, but when it was just the two of us, we hardly talked or even made eye contact. When I told my colleague Emma about what happened, that guy is the worst. Let me know if you need anything. That's a cool thing to say. Days passed, and before I knew it, it was Christmas Eve. Take good care of Edward, will you? Say hello to Linda for me. I said that to John, but as usual, he didn't even meet my eyes. I'm off, then. With an indifferent reply, John and Edward left for my in-laws' house. What's with that attitude? It's so annoying. I spent a lonely Christmas Eve alone in our eerily quiet house. There was no contact from John, but thinking he was having a good time with Linda gave me a little peace of mind. I remembered Linda saying she'd make John clean the house. I wondered if he was being worn out by chores and couldn't help but feel a bit of schadenfreude. But little did I know, John was doing something unthinkable at that time. Christmas Day was busy with quite a few patients. Fortunately, I didn't have to work overtime, so I left work and went straight home. I planned to join my in-laws the next afternoon and spend the holiday with Linda. Might as well enjoy some alone time for a change. As I was thinking this, my mobile phone rang. It was Linda. Thinking it was going to be a complaint about John being lazy, I answered.
Amy, Merry Christmas. You must be tired from working on Christmas. You did great.
Linda didn't sound irritated, just her usual kind self. Merry Christmas, Linda. I wish I could have spent it with you too. Is Edward just playing games? When I asked, Linda fell silent. Even after calling Linda's name a few times with no response, I wondered if it was a bad signal. Amy. John and Edward didn't come here this year. I spent Christmas alone, Linda said. As she spoke, Linda began to sob over the phone. I was in a panic. John and Edward definitely left the house yesterday. Where could they possibly be now? There was a long silence between Linda and me.
I'll head over to your place right now.
It's about a 40-minute drive to my in-laws. On the way, my mind was filled with thoughts of Edward. What if they were involved in an accident or some incident? These worries were spinning in my head. When I arrived at my in-laws, Linda was already waiting outside. As soon as she got into my car,
Should we call the police?
I asked. Linda quietly shook her head. As I wondered why, Linda slowly began to speak. Amy, I'm really sorry about my stupid son. Do you think John is having an affair? Linda looked at me with teary eyes, and I almost started crying too.
What?
Actually. That's when I remembered something and hurriedly drove to a certain place. When we reached our destination. Hello, Edward? Is Dad nearby?
Yeah, he's here. Come quickly, Mom.
I called Edward's mobile phone, and he answered immediately. Even though we had been apart for only a day, Edward's voice sounded so dear to me. Hello. What is it, Amy? I'm busy right now. I heard John's voice, sounding like he wanted to end the call immediately. Hearing that voice made me feel an intense loathing, wanting to confront him. Linda, you said something about making him clean, right? So, are you at your parents' house now? John's response on the phone was calm. Yeah, that's right, Amy. I can't wait to see you. When did he become so adept at lying as easily as breathing? Should I have quit my job? Should I have tried harder at home? But none of that justifies an affair.
Oh. So, Linda, you started a luxury hotel? Does that mean unlimited spa access? How could John keep this a secret? I won't forgive him.
I said those last words filled with hatred, in a very low tone. John on the phone seemed quite flustered. To his silence, I said,
Hey, come out of the room. This is the luxury hotel I always wanted to visit. You said it was too expensive, remember?
As I spoke fluently, John seemed to give up. I'm sorry, he said in a barely audible voice. I found this place using the GPS on Edward's mobile phone. This hotel, not far from my in-laws, was the place I wanted to visit. The fact that John, who said it was too expensive for me, was enjoying himself here with his mistress infuriated me. Perhaps it showed on my face, because on the way to the hotel, Linda kept apologizing. I then found out for the first time that when I worked late shifts, Linda was almost always the one taking care of Edward. I hadn't noticed because she would return home before I got back. John, who is terrible at cooking, used to buy ready-made food, and if Linda tried to cook, he stubbornly refused her. Looking back, that must have been a strategy to keep me from finding out. Even during that short time, John was so enthralled with his mistress. Linda initially believed John was really working, but as his absences increased, her suspicions of an affair naturally grew. The climax was when Linda, asked to take care of Edward as usual, saw John walking arm in arm with an unknown woman, looking intimate. She debated whether to consult me but decided against it. The main reason was, I didn't want to lose the chance to see Amy and Edward. Linda sobbed in the passenger seat. Knowing she cared so much for us, tears streamed down my cheeks too. Linda was more considerate of me and Edward than John ever was. This time, John had contacted her, saying he would spend some rare time alone with Edward, but asked her to cover for him, saying he'd be at her house. Linda, suspecting a lie, worried about Edward and contacted me. I despised John from the bottom of my heart for involving so many people. At the hotel, after explaining the situation, we were made to wait in the lobby. Then, a man and woman with guilty expressions on their faces emerged, along with, Mom. I was getting bored. I played a lot with Henry. Next to Edward was his friend Henry. Henry looked around and said, It looks like my dad hasn't arrived yet. He seemed a bit disappointed. John's mistress was Isabella, a mom from the daycare. I wasn't sure how long the affair had been going on, but these two fools had boldly involved our children. Apparently, they had told their sons that their respective parents would join them later. How despicable. John had booked 2 rooms, one for the children and the other for themselves. So repulsive. Thanks to the hotel's kindness, Linda and I were allowed to stay in a room for a while, where Linda looked after the children in the other room.
Isabella, having an affair with my husband and then talking to me normally at the committee meetings.
I spoke in a calm tone. What?
I thought Amy hadn't noticed anything. It was so funny.
Isabella laughed. What is this woman? I never would have guessed that Isabella, who seemed so fragile and beautiful, was actually this spiteful. I stared at her quietly, pondering the unpredictability of people. John himself seemed a bit taken aback by Isabella's true nature. This woman, without being asked, happily began to talk about how and when she started her affair with John. Their relationship began when our children were in senior kindergarten, on a day I was sick and couldn't attend a parents' meeting, so I asked John to go in my place. It was Isabella who had made the first move. We had known each other as families and had each other's contact information. From that day on, they began to communicate more frequently. It started with complaints about their spouses, but gradually turned into personal conversations. Soon, they began meeting more often, and it didn't take long for their relationship to become romantic.
But now it's all over. What a pity.
Isabella chuckled. To her nonchalant attitude, I said,
You seem quite relaxed for someone about to face serious consequences.
Ignoring her surprised, eh? I stood up decisively. To my bewildered husband, I said,
Come on, get up and check out. I've called a ride for you, so get ready quickly.
I smiled slightly and left the room. Seeing Isabella's face twitch a bit from my remark felt satisfying. Now begins the hellish drive. The trip isn't over until we're home. After checking out, as we headed to the parking lot, Dad. Henry ran joyfully towards the person he was waiting for. It was, of course, Henry's dad, Tom, Isabella's husband. Henry. Sorry to keep you waiting. Have you been good? Tom said in his usual calm manner. Dad, can Edward and I go home first? Mom and you need to talk, he said gently, and the two boys happily got into my car. Thank you. We'll have a long talk on the way home, I said, glaring at Isabella. I had learned from contacting Tom that he was supposedly at work, and Isabella had lied about visiting her parents far away to come here. Both of them are utterly despicable. I was forced to come here. John threatened to use Edward to ostracize Henry at school if I didn't. Isabella started with a shallow lie. Really? You seemed so eager to tell me everything just a while ago. Let's let Tom hear it too. I placed the voice recorder with our earlier conversation in Tom's hand. As she desperately tried to grab it, I said, don't bother. I have another copy just for myself. Smiling, I got into my car. From behind, John's pathetic voice called. Wait, what am I supposed to do now? John called out to me in a pathetic voice from behind. Go home alone? Oh, but I thought you might feel lonely, so I arranged a ride for you too. What? I said this and pointed behind John as I drove away. Standing behind John were my colleague Emma and her husband, who was also a friend from college. Apparently, John owed him a big favor and couldn't stand up to him. I glanced over and saw they were already scolding him. Emma gave me a look that said, "Leave it to me." Though my husband was a disappointment, I was lucky to have supportive people around me. As I expected, everyone's ride home was hellish. Isabella desperately denied her relationship with John in the car, but no one believed her with the voice recorder playing. She eventually admitted to having other affairs. I don't know if John was serious, but he was the one being played from the start. The reason Isabella targeted John was so petty, because Edward got the lead role in a school play over Henry. I was furious. I planned to make him pay a hefty alimony. Henry's custody went to Tom, of course. He said he was going back to his parents' place, a bit far away. John came home late that night, looking like a ghost. Seems like he got a good scolding from Emma and her husband. John always said his college friends were very important to him, as if it were a mantra from the beginning of our marriage. Now, because of this incident, John probably won't be invited to their gatherings anymore. It's nothing but karma. He brought this upon himself. He should regret it. What angered me the most was that every time he met his mistress, John told Edward, "Today's a secret between us men, okay? Don't tell Mom." That's what he used to say. Edward kept that promise and never told me anything. When I found out, I was moved to tears. John and I successfully finalized our divorce.
You stupid man! How can you face your late father now? Don't ever show your face again,
Linda said and slapped him. John finally realized the gravity of his actions and cried like a child. But my heart didn't waver. Afterward, John requested a transfer to a branch outside the prefecture. He paid the alimony and is keeping up with child support. As for me and Edward, we're living with Linda at her place. I considered returning to my parents' home, but my father has remarried and has a new family. Living together would be impossible. Linda suggested we stay with her until our lives stabilize. People are often surprised by our unique relationship, but I still cherish Linda like my real mother. I hesitated about what to call her, but I still call her Linda. We're keeping it a secret, but we plan to celebrate her 60th birthday at that hotel. I splurged and booked the most expensive room. This should turn the unpleasant memories into enjoyable ones. My job became far, and Edward had to transfer schools, but Tom's parents live near our former in-laws, so the boys ended up in the same school again. That was a surprise. Once things settle down, I might rent an apartment near work, but for now, I want to cherish this time a little longer.
I only love you, Emily. Please, forgive me, he said, tears streaming down his face as he apologized. But I had no intention of forgiving him. The revenge plan I had meticulously prepared for 3 months was just beginning. Not only would I make James pay, but his mistress would face my wrath too. With that unwavering determination, I calmly proceeded with my plan. My name is Emily. I've heard stories about how people's impressions of their spouses change drastically after marriage. I, too, had never imagined that James would be such a thoughtless person before we got married. We initially worked in the same industry, with my company outsourcing projects to his. After numerous work-related conversations, James asked me out, and that marked the beginning of our relationship. We dated for about 2 years before getting married the year we both turned 30. My wish to have children soon after marriage came true, and we had our daughter Mia the following year. Looking back, it felt like an ideal life up until that point. When Mia turned 3 and started attending a child care center, James made an unexpected decision. I'm going to become a novelist. I'm serious. Look, read this. James handed me a handwritten short story on lined paper. It was a mystery, and since I wasn't very familiar with the genre, I found it surprisingly good. It's not bad, really. I don't know much about mysteries, but for a short story, it's quite well done. I think you could write something even better. I shared my honest opinion, and James looked at me intently, making a bold declaration. I've been secretly writing novels for years, but I can't lie to myself anymore. I'm quitting my job to focus on writing full-time. What? Hold on. Mia's going to need more and more financial support. Are you seriously expecting me to support the whole family on my income alone? Chasing dreams was fine, but we were married now, and he needed to think things through more carefully. However, James had already quit his job. I was too stunned by his selfish actions to even react. Yet James, unfazed by my sigh of frustration, added, I know, but if I don't take this chance now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. His earnest expression wore me down, and pressing my hand to my forehead, I said, Fine. If you're that determined, then hurry up and win an award or something. Make yourself a proper novelist. I decided to support him. Mia seemed to enjoy having James at home most of the time. James didn't mind spending time with Mia, which kept my annoyance at bay. I'll be working late today, so can you pick up Mia from daycare? Sure. What's for dinner? There are some pre-cooked meals in the fridge. Just heat them up. Since I had to cover James's share of the expenses, I requested a transfer to a more demanding department at work. That decision paid off as I quickly advanced, becoming a manager in my mid-30s, one of the youngest among my peers. After working in the new department for a year, I was earning nearly the same amount as what James and I used to make together. I thought this would ensure stability once Mia started elementary school, but just as I felt relieved, James suddenly pleaded with me. Please, just lend me some money without asking any questions. He begged me with a desperate cry. What is going on? I can't just hand over money without any explanation, even if we're married, especially since you've been relying on my income. Holding back the urge to lash out at James, I demanded an explanation. James, avoiding my gaze, finally spoke. Actually, I had an opportunity to get closer to some people from a publishing company. We went to the horse races together, and I couldn't back out. If I'd been the only one hesitant to bet while everyone else was enthusiastic, it would have ruined the atmosphere. So I used a quick loan service, but the amount spiraled out of control. Hearing James explain the situation left me utterly speechless for the second time. Still, if I said nothing, he would likely continue down this path. Fighting the urge to collapse in exasperation, I replied, "If I were someone from the publishing company, I wouldn't value the work of someone who borrows money recklessly. Even if you became a novelist, wouldn't similar situations make you unable to focus on writing? If you truly want to be a novelist, stop trying to cozy up to publishing people and let your work speak for itself." I didn't have a choice. I've been trying so hard for the past 2 years, but nothing worked. I just wanted to become a novelist as quickly as possible so I could make life easier for you and Mia. James's voice shook as he defended himself, and tears streamed down his face. At that moment, I considered walking away from the man who made his wife work, gambled, and racked up debt, but I couldn't bear the thought of taking Mia's dad away from her. "If you promise never to take out a loan behind my back again, I'll give you the money." "How much do you need?" "Thank you. I swear I'll never borrow money again." James confessed the amount. It was close to an average annual salary, and though shocking, it wasn't unmanageable. After taking the money, James became more diligent with household chores. "Look, I did the laundry. I even made dinner." "Thank you, I appreciate it." But, despite his effort to support me, his clumsiness showed. Even after vacuuming, dust lingered in the corners. His cooking was excessively salty, making it hard to eat. The clothes he washed often still had stains because he miscalculated the detergent. I ended up redoing most of the chores, which didn't lighten my load. At that time, I didn't even have the energy to scold him. Still, I didn't want Mia to feel neglected, so I made a point to spend as much time with her as possible. I thought that once James started earning as a novelist, I could cut back on work. But one day, Mia came to me with shocking news. It was the night after Mia, now a first grader, went on her very first field trip. While we were showering together, Mia smiled brightly and spoke to me. "I saw you and Dad today. You were holding hands at the station with the big clock. Why did you change your hair back to brunette, Mom?" What do you mean?" According to Mia, while on the bus heading to her field trip destination, she saw James and me having a date at a crosswalk near the station. I dressed up because it was a date. I had to change my hair back since I have work tomorrow. "Anyway, did you enjoy your field trip?" Trying not to let my anxiety show on my face, I quickly shifted the topic to her trip. But I hadn't gone on any date with James today. I had been at work all day. So, who exactly was James with? After Mia went to bed, I confronted James. His irritation was palpable as he said, "It's probably just Mia mistaking someone else for us. I'm busy working on my masterpiece right now. Do you have any idea how much time this takes?" James gestured toward a stack of manuscript pages with his chin, but I couldn't overlook the glaring detail. "Sure, it looks like you've been writing a lot, but hasn't the stack stayed the same since last time? Even the content seems identical." Flipping through the pages, I pointed out that they looked just like the ones I had seen 3 days ago. James flushed red and snapped, "I rewrote it. You wouldn't understand, but even slight differences in phrasing can change the impact entirely. Progress doesn't always mean more pages, it's about quality. Now get out of my room." While his argument had some merit, he underestimated my memory. Standing in the hallway, I realized the pages he claimed to have rewritten were identical to what I had seen before. I had always prided myself on my memory, especially when it came to text, and I was certain this was no mistake. I'll have to investigate this further. As I paced the hallway, I muttered to myself and considered my next steps to uncover the truth. 3 months later, on a Monday morning, I left the house at my usual time, supposedly heading to work, but instead of driving off, I sat in the car for about 20 minutes before returning home. The moment I opened the door, I encountered James, who was just about to leave. His beard was neatly shaved, his hair meticulously styled, and his outfit far too polished for a simple trip to the store. "Where are you headed at this hour?" "Where I go is none of your business. You're still such a terrible liar." "I know. You're going to meet her, aren't you?" I showed James my smartphone, displaying a photo of the young woman Mia had mistaken for me. The image, akin to an ID photo, revealed a serious expression, making her resemblance to me strikingly clear. Her hair was blonde, just as Mia had mentioned. "How do you even know about Lisa?" "Oh." James clapped his hands over his mouth, but it was too late to retract what he had said. "Let's have a little chat." Back inside, now, my glare, brimming with fury, made him relent and walk back to the living room. "How long have you been seeing her?" "Well, about 3 years ago, I think. She worked as a barista at the cafe where I used to write my manuscripts. I heard she's now working as a hotel receptionist." At the time, James was working tirelessly, churning out manuscripts and submitting them to every contest he could find. Apparently, Lisa was so moved by the sight of him pouring his heart into his work that she decided to approach him first. "So you got carried away and started dating her, which means by the time of that horse racing fiasco, you were already cheating on me, weren't you?" The horse racing fiasco was when James went to the racetrack with someone from his publishing company, lost a fortune, and I had to cover the damages. James, looking uneasy, said, how should I put this? I don't really remember." His vague response made my irritation flare. I slammed my hand on the table and said, "If you're going to play dumb, I'll just ask her directly, okay? Knowing you, I'm sure you kept the fact that you were married hidden from her, right?" I threatened him, already predicting his reaction. As I expected, James admitted, "Fine, losing money at the racetrack was a lie. I needed the cash for a date with Lisa. A guy without a job can't exactly take out a loan, right? So I had no choice but to ask you for the money, Emily." James confessed that the massive debt he claimed was actually fabricated. Honestly, that alone was enough for me to decide to leave him, but I wasn't ready to let him off the hook yet. "So you made me prepare money just so you could spoil your mistress? That's insane. What happened after that? Did she get satisfied with just your money? Maybe she figured out something was off about me." Eventually, Lisa realized I wasn't wealthy at all. Then she started spoiling me instead. "You're a mess, but she's no better. Or maybe she just has a thing for wasting her time on deadbeat men." I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly at the irony of the situation. By now I'd heard enough. Looking James straight in the eye, I said, "If you've been cheating for 3 years, then you clearly don't love me anymore. Fine, let's get a divorce. I doubt there will be any issues with me getting custody of Mia. Besides, you'd probably feel freer without me anyway." I firmly proposed divorce. However, James shook his head and said, "Lisa was just a fling. She was younger and kind of looked like you, Emily. I just couldn't say no. But you're the only one I truly love, Emily. And Mia needs her dad, doesn't she? Please, don't leave me." Hearing his desperate plea, I covered my mouth and burst out laughing, unable to hold it in. Ignoring James, who was dumbfounded, I turned to the smartphone I had left on the table and said, "You heard that, didn't you? You're nothing but a flame. Now come on in." With a triumphant smile, I called out. A few moments later, Lisa herself stepped into the house from the front door. "What the hell is she doing here? Emily, what is this?" 3 days ago, I visited Lisa before you did. I asked her to stop having an affair with my husband. She told me, "You should step aside because he loves me more." So I said to her, "Let's ask him directly. The one he loves more gets to stay as his wife." As expected, you chose me. While I explained the situation, James was silent, feeling the weight of Lisa's glare. "Come on, Lisa, there's no need to be so intense about this. We were just fooling around. You should go home and cool your head. You told me you loved me. I dressed the way you wanted, did my makeup how you liked, but it was all just to resemble Emily, wasn't it? Well, now I see everything clearly." Lisa, who had been shouting at James, suddenly turned to me with a sly grin. "You know it, don't you? James is only with you for your money. He didn't leave you because he's been benefiting from both your finances and mine. Look at his eyes when he lies, can't you tell? You're his wife. You should know better. Just let him go. I'll take care of him from here." It seemed Lisa's feelings for James were genuine. I returned her smirk with a calm smile and nodded. "You're right. No matter how much he apologizes, I don't want to stay with someone like him. I don't even want to see his face anymore. So pack up and leave." "Wait a minute. Can we at least talk this through? I'm the one paying the rent for this house, so when I say you need to leave, you don't get a say in it. You don't have to rely on this woman anymore. I'll give you money, so let's go." Cornered by both Lisa and me, James reluctantly packed his things. Lisa grabbed his hand, and they walked out together. Watching them leave, I muttered, "This isn't over yet. They'll pay for this." I picked up my smartphone and tapped the screen to set my next plan into motion. It was a week after James moved out when he called me. "Emily, did you do this?" "What are you talking about?" Calling me out of the blue. "Lisa got fired. The hotel manager called her in and told her, 'We can't employ someone who sleeps with other people's spouses.' While that manager has some good judgment, I wouldn't want someone like that serving guests either." You're laughing. It was you, wasn't it? Whatever happens to the two of you is none of my concern. Don't call me again. I ended the call and blocked James's number. As James had guessed, I was indeed the one who informed Lisa's workplace about the affair. For 3 months, I watched them closely, gathering evidence of their infidelity. Hiring a private investigator crossed my mind, but I wanted to handle the revenge myself. I sent Lisa's employer over 100 photos of her and James together, along with a clear message. I would never use a hotel that employs someone who could do something like this without hesitation. Once people know the truth, I'm sure many will feel the same way. All I did was make a complaint call. Understanding the severity of the situation, the receptionist escalated it to the manager, which likely resulted in Lisa losing her job. I even informed the real estate agent managing her apartment about her termination. Apparently, Lisa had often been late with her rent payments because she was funneling money to James, given her loss of employment. It's no wonder the agent concluded she couldn't afford the rent anymore. Later, I discreetly visited Lisa's apartment and witnessed a scene unfold. "Why should we have to move out? This is all that woman's fault. You lost your job. That's why. And I'm telling you, it's all her fault. God, why are you so slow to get it?" Lisa and James were in a heated argument, carrying their belongings out of the apartment. By this point, I may have already developed a desire to watch them hit rock bottom. Lisa, though over a decade younger than me, now faced the harsh reality that it's nearly impossible to find stable work without a place to live. If she had been willing to take a live-in job, perhaps some illegal arrangement might have worked out, but maybe pride held her back, as she didn't pursue such opportunities. As a result, 6 months after losing her apartment, Lisa and James were forced into homelessness. At first, simply watching them from afar brought me satisfaction, but over time, a new emotion began to stir, a desire to humiliate them further. Sitting on a cardboard box, holding out a grimy can for change from passers-by, James and Lisa looked utterly defeated. That's when I decided to make my presence known. "Well, long time no see. What are you doing in a place like this? Why are you here? Emily, please, help us. If Lisa doesn't want your help, just help me. I haven't had a decent meal in months. I told you before, didn't I? Whatever happens to you is none of my concern. Oh, by the way, I'm seeing someone new now. He's way more successful and compassionate than you. Quite the opposite of you, actually. Anyway, I've got a date to get to." Without offering them any help, I coldly shared my updates and walked away. Not long after, I heard that James and Lisa were involved in a fight among the homeless, leaving them both severely injured. No one knows the exact cause, but the fight marked the end of their relationship. Lisa was left with not just physical injuries but profound mental scars, and is now admitted to a psychiatric hospital. 6 months later, as I left my house, happily remarried, and heading to work, I encountered a filthy, disheveled man. It took a moment to recognize him, but it was James. The pungent stench was overwhelming, and his left arm was twisted unnaturally. With bloodshot eyes wide open, James begged. "I was wrong. Please, forgive me. At least give me enough money to see a doctor." "Who are you? Someone like you is definitely not one of my acquaintances." Interrupting James, "Please." I called the police and reported, "A suspicious person is approaching me in front of my house. Please send help." If he had been just a homeless man, a warning might have sufficed, but James had a history of crimes like theft and trespassing, leading to a prison sentence. Rumor has it that James was diagnosed with a severe illness, already in an advanced stage, and passed away in prison. It seems he finally faced the consequences for repeatedly disappointing and betraying me. Feeling a sense of closure from my past, I began to envision a bright future with my new husband. My husband, Henry, is extremely frugal. He constantly repeats phrases like "save money" or "don't waste it," as if they were his personal mantra. Whenever I shop for food or household items, he gets angry if I don't pick the cheapest options. 3 years into our marriage, Henry declared that we would live on $50 for an entire month. I thought $50 was impossible, so I told him, $50 is just not enough to live on. "But Henry, you're my wife, so at least try to be good at saving," simply replied. If Henry insisted, I had no choice but to go along. Not only would I have to endure this harsh frugality, but I would also make sure Henry shared in the effort. Little did I know how this extreme budgeting would eventually unfold. My name is Madeline. I'm 30 years old. I live with my 35-year-old husband, Henry. We met through a mutual friend from college. Henry's earnest and serious nature drew me to him. We got married when I was 27. Before marriage, I didn't know Henry's true nature. He was so obsessed with saving money, it felt more like a fixation. At times, it bordered on being stingy rather than frugal. We weren't saving for anything big like a house or a car. yet he clung to his money-saving habits. After we started living together, I was stunned by his level of thriftiness. Henry's mornings began with scouring supermarket ads for discounts. He would meticulously jot down where to find the cheapest groceries and supplies. Then it became my job to buy the items from his list. However, I had a full-time job, making it hard to manage shopping trips. Early in our marriage, I explained this to Henry. "You're in sales, right? Just pretend you're out on a client visit and stop by the store. Plus, your workplace is closer to the stores anyway." Only for him to say he wasn't wrong about the proximity, but shopping during work hours. If caught, I could lose my job. Of course, I resisted, but Henry shot back with, "Oh, so you think I should do the shopping? I have a much more important job than you." No matter how many times I argued, his response didn't change, so I reluctantly agreed. Henry had decided, and I had no choice. From then on, I began running errands during my sales trips. I felt guilty about it, but since I only shopped every few days and had decent work performance, no one noticed or complained. But it was much harder than I expected to bring the groceries home during a break from work. That was how things were on weekdays, but on weekends, it meant going much farther for shopping. There's a cheaper supermarket located quite a distance from our house. It's about an hour's walk one way. Considering the time spent shopping and the round trip, it takes nearly 3 hours. Once, on the way home after grocery shopping, I suggested, "Why don't we take the bus?" But Henry got mad. "What are you talking about? If we take it once, we'll never stop using it again. You've got heavy bags, you've got legs, and it's good exercise. Just deal with it." I thought it would be easier if we had a car or even a bicycle, so I brought up the idea of buying one, but it was dismissed immediately. Henry said a car would waste money on maintenance, parking fees, and gas, while a bike would be costly to repair if it broke. Even when I offered to use my own money, he still wouldn't allow it. At one point, I grew tired of this shopping routine and considered just stopping by the supermarket on my way home from work. But Henry checks the receipts every day, and if I don't buy exactly what he specifies, he gets angry. Once, the sauce Henry wanted wasn't available, so I bought a slightly more expensive one instead, and he threw the sauce and yelled at me. If the item he specifies isn't available, I'm expected to check several supermarkets and buy the cheapest option. Since then, I make sure to check other supermarkets if Henry's specified items aren't in stock. Henry prides himself on being thrifty, but he's always been someone who doesn't spend much money. In fact, he'll do anything for the sake of saving. Henry receives a commuting allowance from work, but hasn't even bought a pass. He wakes up early every day and walks to work, rain or shine, snow or sleet. He avoids spending money even on hospitals or salons. When his hair grows out, he cuts it himself, although it would undoubtedly look better if done by a professional stylist. I noticed his haircut looked a bit odd, but since he seemed fine with it, I didn't say anything. I thought he might tell me not to go to the salon either, but surprisingly, Henry did not oppose it. Henry just said, "Save money, but make sure to keep up your appearance." So he didn't comment on the minimal salon or makeup expenses. However, since he checks all the receipts thoroughly, I only go for basic haircuts, and I stick to buying affordable, essential cosmetics. Because Henry imposed his ideas and actions on others, he didn't have many friends. Apparently, his coworkers found his frugality annoying and mostly disliked him. Henry's hobby is reading, but even then, he never buys books. Sometimes, he goes to the local library and borrows a few books regularly. Most people spend money on their hobbies, But Henry's hobby doesn't cost him a dime. One day, my mother-in-law, Eleanor, invited us for dinner, so we planned to go to the in-laws' house. It was the second time visiting their home. My father-in-law passed away 3 years before we got married, and Eleanor now lives alone. Their house is about an hour and a half away by car from ours. But even though Henry hardly ever drives, he does when we visit his mom. That said, he rarely goes because he hates spending money on gas. When we arrived at the house, Eleanor looked genuinely happy to see Henry after such a long time. I thought she would welcome me warmly too, but the first thing she said to me was, "Madeline, it's been a while." "Oh, Madeline, are you wearing makeup?" Yes." "Is there something wrong with that? You shouldn't be doing that. Do you know how much you could save by not buying cosmetics? I haven't worn makeup in years. Once your current products run out, you need to stop buying them." Her words left me completely stunned. Why did Eleanor think she had the right to decide that for me? I didn't want to create any tension, so I said to her, "Okay, I understand." Eleanor had prepared quite a spread of dishes for us. All of them were budget meals. She handed me a notebook. "I've written down all the recipes for today's meals here. You should start making them at home too." Made from the back of a calendar, and said, "I see." I hadn't fully realized it during our family meetings, but Eleanor was just as frugal as Henry. In fact, she was even stricter. When I used the bathroom at their house and flushed the toilet, she got upset. "Flushing costs money, you know. The first person should never flush," she'd say. I couldn't help but grimace at her comment, but replied, "Okay, I'll keep that in mind." Of course, I fully intended to flush as usual when at home. While I was in the bathroom, Eleanor was asking Henry about where I usually bought my clothes. Since Henry keeps track of all our receipts, he told her where and how much I typically spend. I always shop at affordable stores and make an effort to buy items on sale. Yet, when I came back from the bathroom, Eleanor turned to me. "You spend too much on clothes. And on makeup too. You're nothing but a wasteful wife. Well, I'd try to shop at cheap stores and stick to sale items. I manage on half of what you spend. You're just bad at shopping." Her lectures about frugality and critiques of me went on and on. Henry just sat next to her, nodding along. We were finally released at 10 p.m. Henry told Eleanor, "We'll visit again soon," but I had no intention of going back anytime soon. The next day, perhaps influenced by Eleanor, Henry became even stricter about saving money. Where I used to buy clothes once a month, I was now limited to 4 items per year, and each item had to be under $20. This included underwear and socks. If I bought a separate top and skirt, that counted as 2 items, so I tried to stick to dresses as much as possible. I stopped buying white clothes because if they got dirty, I wouldn't be able to afford new ones, so I started choosing darker colors instead. Luckily, I already had plenty of clothes, so this kind of saving didn't pose much of a problem. But then, Henry told me not to prepare lunch on weekends. At first, I thought he wanted to save money by skipping a meal, but it turned out to be something else entirely. On weekends, grocery stores usually offer free samples. "Right. That's what we'll have for lunch." I was stunned when he suggested it, but since we were actually shopping at the store, and not just there for the free samples, maybe it wasn't as bad as it sounded. Still, I couldn't help but worry, what if neighbors or acquaintances saw us? Henry also banned me from using public transportation. He allowed exceptions for trips like visiting each of his parents' homes, but otherwise, it was off limits. If friends invited me to hang out or travel, I had no choice but to decline. I used to commute by train, but that was prohibited as well. He insisted on still receiving the same transportation allowance, but ordered me not to use the train under any circumstances. I couldn't imagine the trouble I'd face if my company found out about this. When I told Henry to stop making me follow such absurd rules, he ignored me. My office wasn't too far, so I ended up walking 40 minutes each way every day, thanks to these extreme saving measures. By the third year of our marriage, our annual living expenses, excluding rent, had dropped to about $2.05. It was even less than I spent when I lived alone, and I was amazed, but Henry wanted to save even more. Then he came up with something truly shocking. Starting next month, I want you to live on $50 a month, he announced. What was he even talking about? I had never managed on less than $100 a month, let alone $50. It was impossible. There's no way we can live on $50 a month, I told him. No, $2.05 a year is way too high. You're my wife, so you should manage our budget properly. But Henry just said living expenses included food, household items, and utilities. $50 wouldn't even cover utilities alone. We were already on the cheapest plans, so staying under $50 seemed out of reach. I explained this to Henry. What? I don't care. Who's supporting you? You do what I say. Do you know why we've been able to save so much? It's because of me, always thinking things through. You should be grateful to me. But that was his response. Sure, both our savings accounts had grown significantly, but Henry believed it was all thanks to him, which wasn't true. It was because I had been going along with this absurd saving lifestyle. He meticulously checked shopping receipts, but ignored everything else. He had no idea how much we spent on utilities, insurance, or medical expenses. Of course, I made sure we were on the cheapest plans for everything. He needed to understand that these savings were because of my efforts. On top of that, I had always managed to stay within the budget he provided. Why did I have to work even harder after all I'd done? Henry never lifted a finger himself, but always demanded unreasonable things from me. And whenever something didn't go his way, he complained endlessly. Every time, I ended up apologizing to him. This time, I knew resisting was pointless, so I had no choice but to accept it. But even if we manage to live on $50 this month, Henry will probably complain about something. Since Henry said it's possible to live on $50 for a month, I decided to give it a try. I started thinking about what expenses to cut. First, the grocery bill. We buy plenty of bread and pasta each month, but just buying those would eat up nearly half of the $50 budget. It can't be helped, though. We'll have to eat less. For breakfast, I decided to eat bread crusts that the bakery gives away for free. Also, I've been gardening to save money, but I decided to expand the variety. Up until now, I've only grown tomatoes and zucchini, but I decided to try growing bell peppers and lettuce as well. Of course, Henry doesn't help at all, so I'm doing everything by myself. Vegetables aren't something you can harvest daily, but having some is better than none. With a $50 budget for a month, there will be days when I can't make proper meals, and will have to make do with just bread. On those days, the vegetables from the garden can brighten up the table just a little. Thanks to the garden, I think the food budget should be manageable. Next, there's insurance. When my father-in-law was hospitalized due to illness, insurance was a lifesaver, so we decided to keep the minimum necessary coverage. I kept a basic health insurance for hospitalizations, but canceled the life insurance, thinking there's no immediate need for it. Lastly, the utilities. First, gas. Our house has an induction stove, so the gas is only used for showers. It might not be a problem to cancel the gas entirely, It's winter, so we don't sweat much. We could probably skip daily showers. Next is water. There's a public restroom in the nearby park, so we can use it instead of the toilet at home. We could also get water from the park's drinking fountain for washing dishes, cleaning ourselves, and even for drinking. Lastly, electricity. When I lived alone, I had a TV, but Henry insisted it was a waste of electricity and banned me from watching it. I can charge my phone at work, so that's not an issue. Cooking can be done by starting a fire like we do when camping. I used a broom for cleaning, and washing clothes by hand with water from the park would suffice. For light, we can just go to bed when it gets dark. Thinking about it, I realized we could cancel gas, water, and electricity entirely without major problems. If this works, we might be able to cut the budget even below $50. With the leftover money, we could afford small indulgences. Since it's difficult for me to do this alone, I asked Henry to cooperate. I asked him to fetch water daily. I thought he could carry more than I could. Thanks to this budget challenge, my burden has lightened. I no longer have to go grocery shopping. For that, I'm grateful to Henry for suggesting this. However, this frugal lifestyle lasted only 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, Henry collapsed at the entrance, saying, "I can't do this anymore." Apparently, he couldn't endure this extreme lifestyle. Henry had been fetching water every morning, but it's winter now. He couldn't bear the cold anymore. Recently, after fetching water and coming back, Henry often looked like he was about to cry. Not being able to take a shower was hard for him. Every morning, he would wipe his body or wash his hair with the water he fetched, but it wasn't enough. His hair started to smell, and his colleagues had to point it out. That's when I realized how important shampoo and body soap truly are. Henry is a proud person, so being criticized at work really shook him. The meals were another struggle for him. Breakfast consisted of scraps of bread. Lunch was plain boiled pasta with no flavor or toppings. And dinner was a combination of bread and vegetables from our small garden. By the second week, he started saying, "I can't stand bread and pasta anymore. I want real food." He also complained about the toilet, saying it was too cold outside or that it smelled bad. Eventually, he refused to do laundry, saying it was too much trouble. How he could demand that I live on $50 a month under such conditions is beyond me. I couldn't help but find the whole situation ridiculously funny. In the end, the $50 a month lifestyle was abandoned because Henry couldn't endure it. He was embarrassed by his failure, especially since he had been so confident in his ability to save money. Since then, he stopped nagging about being frugal. That month, we had canceled gas, water, and electricity, so we indulged in eating out and shopping until everything was restored. Henry seemed to realize how unreasonable his demands had been. One day, while dining at a restaurant, "How do you think anyone could live on $50 a month?" I asked him. Henry remained silent. "Sorry, living on $50 a month is impossible. I apologize," eventually muttering in a small voice. Later, I divorced Henry. Although I loved him when we got married, his unreasonable demands during our frugal phase made it impossible for me to stay with him. Since the divorce was his fault, I demanded compensation. Surprisingly, he paid it all in one go. I never imagined someone as stingy as Henry would do that, but I suppose he had enough savings. Meanwhile, Eleanor claimed that I should be the one paying compensation. Her argument made no sense to me. Incidentally, during the $50 a month phase, I was living luxuriously. Since Henry came home late, I dined out every evening. Also, not being able to shower in winter was unbearable, so I frequented spas. On Saturdays, I lied about visiting my parents and went to upscale spas instead. I might have overindulged in spending as a rebound. After the divorce, I returned to living alone. I'm no longer trying to save excessively and am leading a normal life. At work, I've occasionally skipped out to go shopping or pocketed travel expenses without using them, which I feel a bit guilty about, but my career remains stable. After divorcing me, Henry apparently felt uncomfortable at work and decided to quit his job. He returned to his in-laws' house, but Eleanor, who is notoriously stingy, lives there. For Henry, who has been traumatized by frugality, living with Eleanor must have been incredibly tough. Now he has moved out of the in-laws' house and is living on his own. However, his habit of imposing his opinions on others hasn't changed, and he seems to be struggling with relationships at his new workplace as well. People at his company think it's only a matter of time before he quits again. I thought I was done with marriage for good, but a friend I hadn't seen in a long time introduced me to a man. We became close after going out for meals a few times and decided to date with marriage in mind. And recently, he proposed to me. Today is the day I'm visiting his parents' home. I was stunned when I arrived. It was a mansion. It turns out that my future father-in-law is the president of a large company. Thank you for having me. This time, I might finally have a happy married life, free from frugality.
Hurry up and catch the culprit. And make sure the hospital takes full responsibility too. Have you contacted the police yet? No, I thought we'd wait for you to arrive and discuss it first. We will consider the hospital's response to Diana from now on. Of course, we will do everything we can. What do you mean by everything we can? Be specific. We're going to figure that out right now. There are surveillance cameras in Diana's room, right? Yes, severely injured patients who can't move on their own are usually placed in rooms with cameras in most hospitals. Since they can't press the nurse call button or call for help if their condition suddenly changes. You missed that 1 in a million chance, meaning the cameras are useless. It's impossible to monitor the cameras 24/7. But we always keep the recordings. This is so we can check what happened if there's a problem. So, if we check the cameras, there's a good chance the culprit will be on them, right? I think that's very likely. Can I see it too? How about watching it together with the police? My Diana had been in a persistent vegetative state since an accident 5 years ago. Yet, Diana is now pregnant. Overwhelmed by the situation, Timothy is constantly agitated and always confronting the doctors. This isn't getting us anywhere, so I decided to talk to the doctor instead. There are cameras in the room, so it seems like we could identify the culprit quickly by checking the footage. However, Timothy interrupts our conversation. I think checking the footage is pointless. Why? The cameras are blatantly installed in the room, right? There's no way the culprit didn't notice them. They must have taken some measures to do something so terrible. But we can't just not check. It's pointless. And even if the culprit is on the footage, do you really want to see what they did? I don't want to see that, but... Timothy is right. If we check the footage, we'll see something we don't want to see. It's better to leave this to the police. We finished talking to the doctor and went back to Diana's room. At that moment, Timothy had a nasty, villainous look on his face. There was something off about Timothy during the conversation with the doctor earlier too. My trust in Timothy is crumbling. Moreover, I overhear Timothy talking to someone later. The content of that conversation was utterly unacceptable. I'm Mary. I'm 42 years old and a housewife. My husband, Timothy, is a year older and works for a company. Timothy and I were friends in a college club. Timothy was a leader that everyone relied on, admired by many girls. And I was one of those many girls. With so many rivals, many of whom were cute, I was content just to watch Timothy from afar. However, for some reason, Timothy approached me. "Why did you choose me out of all those popular girls?" I once asked him.
"Mary, you get discouraged easily, right? I just couldn't leave you alone."
I had always been self-conscious about my tendency to get easily discouraged. But it seemed that this personality trait worked in my favor, unintentionally activating the girl who needs to be protected appeal, a classic in romantic strategies. After a year of dating, Timothy became a working adult. Since there's only a year difference, I quickly followed suit. However, there was a big difference between being a college student and a working adult, and I felt like Timothy had become an adult first, making him seem even more reliable. In reality, Timothy, who had become a working adult first, was very reliable. I can't do it anymore. No matter what I do, I can't remember anything. I keep making mistakes, and my seniors are always angry at me. It's so hard to go to work. In my first year as a working adult, with my weak mental state, I naturally felt a constant sense of gloom. If my current self could be beside my younger self, I'd encourage her, telling her that it's normal to feel that work is tough and not wanting to go to the office. However, speaking for those with a weak mental state, during such times, it's like being in the depths of negativity, where even standing up is painful. Some people might drop out entirely because of this. But I had Timothy. The job of a new employee is to cause trouble. You should only start worrying when no one says anything to you anymore. It's much scarier when they stop saying anything because they've given up on you. The fact that they still say things means they expect you to be able to do it. Also, if your current workplace really doesn't suit you, it's okay to change jobs, you know? It's not the era where sticking to the same company is seen as a virtue. It's still easier to find a job right after graduating from college. Timothy never told me to hang in there. Instead, he always reminded me not to overdo it. I had believed that giving my all was the right thing to do, but his words felt like a fog lifting from my eyes. Thanks to Timothy's advice, I was able to relax a bit and continue my job. I thought there was no one more reliable than him. 3 years after I started working, we had a shotgun marriage. We had been dating for almost 5 years, and as work was settling down, I could feel the atmosphere of marriage coming, so I wasn't surprised when I found out I was pregnant. Rather, I thought it was a great opportunity to get married. Neither of us had met each other's parents, but we had told them about each other when we were students. They also knew we were still together after becoming working adults. So, when we informed them of the pregnancy, they were not angry but instead happy. My parents had wanted me to get married soon, and his parents were eager to see their grandchild's face. After informing our parents, I wanted to have the wedding before my belly got too big, so we hurriedly prepared for the wedding. We successfully had the wedding, and then I gave birth to our daughter, Diana.
"Diana, you're always so cute. Hey, she just fell asleep. Don't wake her up."
Timothy was obsessed with Diana. Because of this, he would rush home from work at lightning speed and wouldn't stay more than 3 feet away from Diana on weekends. He doted on Diana so much that I often worried he might spoil her too much. However, his obsession had its upsides, as Timothy actively took care of Diana. Thanks to that, I was able to smoothly return to work after my maternity leave. Diana continued to grow up healthy and strong, reaching the age of 12. She was supposed to start middle school soon. But now, she spends every day in a hospital bed. Diana was hit by a car while walking home from after-school tutoring with two friends. They were crossing the crosswalk when the signal turned green, but the driver was looking at their smartphone and didn't notice the light. Although I don't like to use the phrase, in the midst of misfortune, two of her friends only suffered fractures and were not in any life-threatening condition. However, Diana ended up in a persistent vegetative state. Her eyes are open, but she has no cognitive function and cannot move her body at all. I felt that Diana had taken on the misfortune meant for her friends, and I resented the two friends who were unharmed. I know I'm way off base. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to keep my sanity.
You stay with Diana. I'll handle everything that's a hassle.
I'm sorry. Please. I was barely able to stay by Diana's side, my mind on the brink of collapse. If I had to deal with the accident details or her treatment now, I knew I wouldn't be able to keep it together. Timothy understood my fragile mental state and took care of everything, from dealing with the person responsible for the accident to all the hospital paperwork. Timothy really is reliable. But he must be struggling too. I feel guilty for pushing all the responsibilities onto him. Feeling ashamed of my own helplessness, I inch closer to a complete mental breakdown. After some time, Diana's compensation was paid out. This money was to be used for Diana's future living expenses, so Timothy set up a separate account. The account Timothy showed me had tens of millions of dollars listed. Normally, this would be an enormous amount of money. This money ensures that we don't have to worry about Diana's immediate needs. While I'm grateful for it, looking at those figures fills me with emptiness. So, we'll pay for her hospitalization and other expenses from here.
That's how it will be.
We can't request more money if this runs out, right? What if it does? Can we cover Diana's hospital bills with our income? It feels like this amount is a countdown on how long we can be with Diana.
Don't say that. Diana will recover before this money runs out.
She might not.
Even if she doesn't, we were told to keep talking to her for 10 or 20 years, never give up. They said people have recovered after 30 years. Stop talking so pessimistically.
I'm sorry.
You still seem really stressed. I'll keep handling the details, so you just stay with Diana.
I'm sorry. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown. There was no way I could work in this state, so I quit my job to become a housewife and stay by Diana's side. But honestly, I didn't do much around the house, so it was more accurate to say I was unemployed. I stayed with Diana all the time, while Timothy continued working. At first, Timothy would visit the hospital every day after work. But after a while, he started coming less often, and my frustration with him grew. A year after Diana's accident, my frustration reached its limit.
Why don't you come to the hospital more? Don't you care about Diana? You come home smelling of alcohol. What are you thinking?
I unleashed a year's worth of pent-up frustration on Timothy. But it seemed I wasn't the only one holding in resentment.
You could at least do some housework. Look at this living room. It's filthy and cluttered. It's not just here, it's the whole house. I'm coming home late because you don't cook, so I eat out. And you're not the only one hurting over Diana. Can't I escape with a little drink?
I was clearly in the wrong. Timothy's shouting snapped me back to reality. Looking around, I finally saw how dirty the room was. I'm sorry. I'm not the only one suffering, am I? And I've been selfish, dumping everything on you.
I apologize for yelling. You were right, Mary. I haven't been going to the hospital as much as I should have. From now on, I'll make more of an effort to visit Diana.
By airing out our grievances, we both felt a sense of relief. This clarity allowed us to reflect on our actions, renewing our determination to work together for Diana's sake. Timothy had not been visiting the hospital for a few months, but he began coming 2 or 3 times a week. I started managing things at home and took up a part-time job. However, the hospital dealings were complicated and, having missed the initial explanations, I couldn't grasp everything. Thus, I left those responsibilities to Timothy. In return, I took charge of everything else. For a while, this arrangement worked. But soon, problems began to surface again.
You didn't visit the hospital this week, did you? You missed last week too. Is work keeping you that busy?
Yeah, it's been really hectic.
That's why I'm getting home so late.
Timothy had stopped visiting the hospital again and was coming home late. Although he claimed work was the reason, he often smelled of alcohol when he came back. While it would be easy to voice my frustrations again, I understood that Timothy had his struggles too. Given the circumstances, it was understandable that he might be experiencing emotional ups and downs. Being someone who often dealt with my own emotional fluctuations, I could empathize with Timothy's feelings. I believed that in time, he would start visiting the hospital again. With that in mind, I decided to watch over Timothy. However, this meant I couldn't rely on him for support during his low periods. I continued going to the hospital daily and working part-time. Gradually, I adapted to the routine, but my tendency to overdo things led to me falling ill.
You never change, do you?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm the one who broke my promise to visit the hospital. From now on, I'll go on weekends without fail. You need to take a break. But you're the one working more. Everyone has different limits. It's not about who works more. If you don't overdo it and rest properly, you won't get sick like this. Plus, if you go to Diana looking exhausted, she will worry about you.
You're right. Once again, we both reflected on our actions, and Timothy resumed his hospital visits. 3 years after Diana's accident, Timothy kept his promise and visited the hospital every weekend. When Timothy was at the hospital, I rested at home. This wasn't because we were taking Diana's situation lightly or neglecting her. Diana's treatment was a long-term process. In these 3 years, I learned that maintaining efficiency in our lives was crucial for enduring this long battle. As for Diana's condition, I noticed some improvement.
Diana, it's a lovely day today, isn't it? We couldn't go outside last week because of the rain. Are you happy?
I pushed Diana's wheelchair through the hospital courtyard. Diana started going for walks. A male nurse named Eric always accompanied us on these walks. Although female nurses primarily took care of Diana, Eric helped with moving her from the bed to the wheelchair. I saw a joy in Diana's face as she basked in the sunlight. Others might not notice any change in her expression. But to me, it seemed like Diana was smiling. Previously, there was no change in her expression, so I took this as a sign of her recovery. Moreover, the signs of her recovery were not limited to her expressions. When I talked to Diana while holding her hand, it felt like she was responding with blinks. Although it could be mistaken, there were also noticeable changes. Diana became able to eat again. Even though eating means she could swallow paste-like food through swallowing training, the main source of nutrition was still through a feeding tube. Nevertheless, it gave me hope and expectations. After finishing our walk and returning to the hospital room, a female nurse came in. This month's hospital bill hasn't been paid yet. It must be Timothy who forgot to pay it. I usually leave the communication with the hospital to Timothy. Therefore, I just needed to call him and let him know about the missed payment. However, Timothy has been on a business trip since yesterday. He could probably make the transfer from his trip, but I felt bad about bothering him for just a payment. I decided to go home and look for Diana's account where her money was deposited.
Oh, it's not here.
I thought it would be in the drawer where we keep our joint accounts, but I couldn't find Diana's account.
Oh, it must be there.
There is a shelf where we keep documents and contracts used during hospitalizations and accidents. Diana's account must be there. As expected, I found Diana's account in the place I had predicted. However, the contents were different from what I had expected.
Huh? It's already this low?
When I checked the account balance, it had already dropped to less than half. I understand that hospitalizations cost money. However, nearly $100,000 disappearing in 3 years is strange. I began to rummage through the shelves again to find documents that detail Diana's hospitalization costs. Then, from the shelf, a large number of membership cards, business cards, and coupons from sexual entertainment establishments came out. It seemed Timothy had been frequenting strip clubs. When I searched for the names on the membership cards and business cards, I found some were from clubs. Judging by the decrease in the money, it looked like he had also been spending on branded goods. When he smelled of alcohol, it was a club, and when he didn't smell of alcohol but came home late, it was a strip club. The unnecessary thoughts made me feel sick. If it were just strip clubs or clubs, some might get furious and make him promise not to go again. However, this was an amount that couldn't be dismissed so lightly. More than anything, I couldn't forgive him for touching Diana's money. I decided to confront Timothy when he returned from his business trip.
What's the meaning of this? Well, when Diana had the accident, you were going through a really negative phase, remember? I was so stressed out by you. So, I used it as stress relief. So, it has been since then? I've had my breakdowns, but I haven't been negative since then, have I? Well, about a year after that, we had that big fight, right? I stopped spending money then. But once you indulge even once, you can't go back, you can't resist.
I was ready to confront Timothy about using Diana's money and even consider divorce. However, the cause of his spending was my mental breakdown that had put stress on him. Understanding that I was also part of the cause, I couldn't get completely angry at him.
I see. I understand. But there won't be a next time. You're forgiving me? When Diana recovers, are you planning to tell her we got divorced? Right, you're right. But, as I said before, there really won't be a next time. Next time, I'll show no mercy and divorce you. I'll take over Diana's account. When there's a payment, let me know the recipient and the amount. I'll handle it from now on.
I hate how weak-willed I am in these situations. Timothy understood my personality and probably knew this would happen. However, even if I knew, I couldn't fight against my nature, so I made a compromise and told myself this was fine for now. 5 years after the accident. Since Timothy's incident of embezzling money, he has been more subdued. I hold Diana's account and have significantly reduced his allowance, so he can't frequent strip clubs anymore. Sometimes he comes home late, but he shouldn't have any money on hand, so he's probably just drinking within his allowance. I continue to work part-time while visiting Diana.
It's raining today, so we can't go for a walk.
I say this while wiping Diana's body, as usual. When I was about to wipe her belly as usual, I noticed that Diana's belly was swollen. Diana can eat, though it's in paste form. Even so, she can't eat enough to make her stomach swell. I thought her unnaturally swollen belly might be due to some illness, so I called a nurse. After that, a doctor examined her and revealed something unbelievable. Diana was pregnant. Of course, Diana, in a persistent vegetative state, couldn't do such a thing herself. I immediately called Timothy. When Timothy heard about Diana's pregnancy over the phone, he flew over at the speed of light and yelled at the doctor the moment he saw him.
What the hell is going on with the security in this hospital?
The doctor shrank back, unable to respond. Timothy, showing no mercy, continued.
You've contacted the police, right? Catch the perpetrator quickly. And the hospital will have to take appropriate responsibility for this.
The doctor just nodded in response to Timothy's fury. Timothy's anger was justified, and I was angry too. However, just yelling wouldn't solve anything. I calmed Timothy down and talked to the doctor. Have you contacted the police?
No, I thought it would be best to wait until Timothy arrived and we discussed it. We will consider Diana's care from now on. Of course, we will do everything we can.
What do you mean by everything we can?
Be specific.
We're going to figure that out right now. I stopped Timothy, who was getting unnecessarily confrontational, and continued the conversation.
There are surveillance cameras in Diana's room, right?
Yes, I believe we informed you when she was admitted.
Those cameras are for security, but also to monitor the patient's condition. Patients who are severely incapacitated and can't move on their own are often placed in rooms with cameras in most hospitals. Since they can't press the nurse call button or call for help in case of sudden changes. You're missing the point of having cameras if you can't catch something like this.
I was getting tired of having to stop him all the time, so I glared at Timothy to make him quiet.
We can't monitor the cameras 24/7, but they are always recording. It's to check what happened in cases like this. So, if we check the cameras, there's a chance the perpetrator will be on them, right?
I think that's quite possible. Can I see it too?
How about checking with the police?
This made me feel a bit relieved, thinking the perpetrator would be caught soon. However, Timothy ruined it.
Checking the footage will be useless.
Why?
The camera is right there in the room, isn't it? The perpetrator wouldn't miss that. They must have done something to avoid it before committing such a horrible act. But we can't just not check.
Checking is pointless.
Besides, even if the culprit was caught on camera, do you really want to see what they did to Diana? No! I don't want to see that. In that case, leave it to the police. We should focus on the hospital and what comes next. Just like always, you stay with Diana, and I'll handle things with the hospital. Let's wait for the hospital to give us their best response. Considering their lack of security, we should expect significant action from them. If they try to give us anything less, we'll push back.
Timothy took my hand and led me back to Diana's hospital room. Once we were back in the room, Timothy started to smirk unpleasantly. He was snapping at the doctors and putting pressure on the hospital to get the best possible conditions for Diana. With a mixture of fear and hope that I wouldn't hear the answer I dreaded, I cautiously asked Timothy,
"Are you planning to get money from the hospital?" "Of course, isn't that obvious?" "Are you saying you don't want it?"
"It's not that.
I think we should get what we rightfully need, but watching you, it feels like you'll demand more than that." "And what's wrong with that? It's only right to take as much as we can. This is like Diana earning her own money using her body. But she can't speak up for herself. So, it's our duty as her parents to get as much as we can from the hospital, don't you think?"
Timothy seemed to be so immersed in his visits to strip clubs that it had tainted his mind. I hold no prejudice against women who work at strip clubs. There are certainly those who take pride in their work. However, Diana never wanted to be pregnant. Yet Timothy claimed she had earned money using her body. My trust in Timothy was crumbling away. Can money and greed really corrupt a person this much?
I skipped work to be here, so I need to call the office.
As Timothy left the room, his back looked like that of a movie villain to me.
It's okay, sweetheart. I'll make sure everything's all right.
I held Diana's hand, offering words without any real foundation. I knew better than anyone that I couldn't do anything, being neither a doctor, a police officer, nor a lawyer. I sighed and looked out at the courtyard from the window. That's when I saw Timothy. He was heading towards the far end of the courtyard. It seemed he was planning to go to a hidden part of the building. But if it was just a call, he didn't need to go that far. He wasn't even dialing while walking. My suspicions grew, and I hurriedly followed Timothy. Concealing myself, I saw Timothy meeting with a male nurse. It was Eric, the nurse who always helped with Diana's walks. He must have arrived while I was coming down from the room. I listened intently to their conversation. What I heard was unbelievable. My feelings boiled down to pure rage upon learning the truth. A few days after Diana's pregnancy was discovered, Diana underwent an abortion. Though the risks were high, the procedure was successful. In my heart, I felt relief, believing Diana was on the road to recovery and regaining her strength, so I made a victory pose. As for the crucial hospital room camera, just as Timothy had said, there was no suspicious figure caught. In fact, there were no interruptions or signs of tampering or editing in the footage. It was as if Diana had been impregnated by a ghost. However, DNA testing of the fetus revealed that the culprit was not a ghost, but Eric, the male nurse who helped with Diana's walks.
The perpetrator was Eric, wasn't it? What a stupid thing to do. Well, thanks to him, we get money from the hospital. We should thank him.
With harsh words, Timothy acted as if the case was already resolved since the perpetrator was caught. However, the real resolution of the case starts now. When Timothy and I were at home, the doorbell rang.
Is it a delivery? I think it's your guest. Can you get it?
Huh? Oh, okay. Timothy gave me a puzzled look before heading to the front door. I followed behind him.
What? What's going on?
When Timothy opened the door, a police officer was standing there.
Did you call them?
Timothy turned around abruptly, showing me a surprised expression.
I didn't call them, but I got a heads up that they would come soon.
They asked if you were home.
What do you mean? I overheard you and Eric talking at the edge of the courtyard. The edge of the courtyard? That's right. I heard you allowing Eric to do terrible things to Diana for money. What were you thinking, selling Diana's body?
The day Diana's pregnancy was discovered, I overheard a conversation between Timothy and Eric.
What should we do? I never thought she would get pregnant. Seriously. What were you thinking? Now the perfect plan of taking Diana for a walk, avoiding the security cameras, and pretending I, as her father, was just on a walk with her is ruined. Am I going to get caught?
Probably. Isn't that what you said?
That DNA testing can be done even on the fetus. You'll get arrested, and I'll lose the allowance you give me. My wife has taken control of our account, and I get only a little allowance. Your money was my last resort. Now I can't even go to the strip club. This sucks. Well, thanks to you, I'll probably trick the hospital into giving me money. But don't break your promise. I'm going to tell the police that I did it by myself, right?
That's right.
Not only did I let you have sex with a 17-year-old virgin, but I let you do it for a cheap price, so it's only natural that you should be the only one guilty, right? Just make sure you keep your end of the deal.
I know. If you get caught and get out later, I'll let you have it again. And don't worry, I'll remember the discount for taking the fall.
I felt like I was going to vomit from disgust, but I recorded their conversation on my smartphone. I submitted that recording to the police. With the DNA test results and the recording, the police took action. When Eric was caught, he tried to stick to the deal with Timothy and take the blame alone. However, faced with the audio data I provided, he confessed everything. Eric's mention of Timothy led the police to decide they needed to talk to him as well, so they came to get him.
Any excuse you make now is pointless. Damn it! What's wrong with letting a guy have a little fun? It's not like it means anything.
Timothy was quietly taken away by the police. I didn't miss the words he muttered at that moment. I had already planned to get a divorce, but my resolve grew stronger. Since Diana was only 17 and underage, both Timothy and the nurse were charged with child welfare law violation and prostitution law violation. Even though it was their first offense, the severity of their actions led to a 7-year prison sentence. Of course, Timothy and I got divorced. We split the marital savings, but I didn't give him any of Diana's money because she still needed it for her hospital stays. Losing his social standing after a prison sentence would make things tough for him upon release. I briefly considered giving him a bit more money to help, but remembering his words as he was taken away changed my mind. Now, I want him to struggle as much as possible. I moved back to my parents' house, and Diana was transferred to a hospital nearby. My parents agreed to help support Diana, so I decided to go back to work. Though it would be challenging due to the gap in my employment, I was determined to work hard to support Diana. Wait a minute. You're being way too rough.
You like it this way, don't you? She never does this for you, right?
Don't say that.
Call me by my name. Like you always do.
I was standing in front of the bedroom door. I quickly realized that my husband Norman's companion was my own sister, Elvira. Anger surged within me, and I pinched my hand to calm the urge to burst in. I needed to stay calm first. I took out my smartphone and decided to record their conversation. I never expected Elvira to be the other woman. I noticed something was wrong when I came home. I'm home. At the entrance, there were unfamiliar women's shoes. I immediately knew he had brought a woman into our home. Then, I heard voices coming from the upstairs bedroom, so I moved to the door. The voices were loud, echoing through the house. But why are we at this house today?
Because it's more thrilling this way, isn't it?
That's true, but we usually do this at your place.
I've been trying not to cause a scene. She's so clueless, she never noticed.
That's right. She'd never suspect we're doing this. What an idiot. I finally understood why I hadn't noticed their relationship before. They had been meeting at her place. Still, I continued recording, thinking about how I could use this as evidence. Imagining how their parents would react kept me from losing my mind. I considered bursting in, but my feet wouldn't move. Why? If I went in, I'd catch them in the act. Maybe I couldn't bear to see that.
When will you give me a child?
No, that's too risky. Your husband would notice.
It'll be fine. I can do it with my husband later, and he won't notice. He's so clueless.
You're a terrible wife.
You're worse.
Listening to their conversation made my head ache and I felt nauseous. My mind was at its breaking point. I decided to call out to my husband. Where are you? The two of them must have panicked upon realizing I was there, because I heard the window open. They probably tried to hide on the balcony. But that was the worst decision they could have made.
because it was snowing heavily today. Oh, they messed up big time. I slowly entered the room and looked around. Their clothes were scattered everywhere. They went outside completely naked. I saw them huddling in the corner, trying not to be seen. I immediately locked the door. And then, I started thinking about what kind of punishment I should give them. I never thought I'd feel such a thrill. My name is Dana, I'm 34 years old, and I work in sales at a local company. I live with my husband Norman, who is 3 years older than me. I met Norman at a sales meeting. In my mid-20s, I had just switched jobs and was still getting used to the work. I remember how kindly he treated me.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Keep up the good work.
I will.
At that time, I just thought he was a nice guy. It took some time before we met again, but it felt like fate. I have an older sister, Elvira. Norman was one of her classmates. Elvira got married 3 years ago, and Norman attended her wedding. Do you remember me?
Oh, from the sales meeting.
That's right.
Meeting you here is unexpected. Excuse me, but how do you know Elvira?
Elvira and I were classmates in high school and college.
Oh, I see.
As we were having a pleasant conversation, the star of today's event, Elvira, arrives.
Oh, did you two know each other? Not exactly. We've worked together before and he was a great help.
Oh, it was nothing.
But thanks to you, I secured the contract.
That's definitely your own skill. As we continued this back and forth, Elvira began to laugh.
What? I was just thinking you two seem to get along well. Don't tease me. I'm actually quite serious.
Elvira's intervention led to Norman and me exchanging contact information. However, knowing Elvira's assertive nature, I thought Norman might find it a nuisance. But about a week after we exchanged contact details, I received a call.
Hello.
Sorry for the sudden call.
It's okay. Is something wrong?
Well,
What is it?
would you like to have dinner sometime?
Yes.
I responded instinctively. I'll call you again. With that, he hung up. I didn't mind, but I couldn't just refuse now. Honestly, with little experience in relationships, I didn't know what to do. It was just dinner, but I still felt uneasy. Living at home at the time, I decided to consult Elvira. Even after getting married, Elvira had chosen to stay with her parents, remaining at home.
So he asked you out? That's great. Well, it's not that great. I don't have much experience with this. Then you were right to come to me for advice.
Elvira had always been popular. Even during our school days, she often brought different guys home. I thought she would give good advice, but that was a mistake. As adults, she had calmed down, but she still enjoyed pushing me, who was more reserved, to do things her way. How many times had she made me cry?
Dana, don't worry. With me around, there's nothing to fear. So, what should I do? Let's see, how about some seduction? What? Norman is weak to that kind of thing.
Wait a minute. I'm just going out for dinner.
What are you talking about? It won't just end at dinner.
Elvira continued to give outlandish advice. But that wasn't the only problem. My parents doted on Elvira, letting her do as she pleased. They preferred Elvira, who could be easily flattered, over me, who was more difficult to handle. I had wanted to leave home right after graduating from college, but they wouldn't allow it. Despite not being genuinely interested, they wanted to keep me close. Finally, the day of the dinner arrived.
Good luck.
All right, I'm off. In the end, the dinner was a success. It was very enjoyable, much better than feeling out of place at home.
If you don't mind, could we meet again?
If it's all right with you, yes please.
Great. I'm not very used to women.
If you say that, I'm even less used to men.
No, I am.
No, really, I am.
As we exchanged these words, we both burst into laughter. It had been a long time since I felt this happy. It was natural that as we grew closer, we would start dating. The one who didn't take it well was Elvira. Despite all her teasing.
What? You're really dating?
Yes, but
I never thought you'd end up dating. Did you follow my advice?
there's no way I can do that.
Why did this happen?
The reason Elvira had gone so far as to provoke this failure would be revealed by an unexpected person.
What?
Really? That person was Elvira's husband, Johnny.
Yeah.
You know I met Elvira back in college, right?
Yes, she told me.
I also got to know Norman back then, but it seems she liked him since high school. She couldn't do anything about it because he had a girlfriend.
But why are you telling me this?
I overheard her talking the other day.
But she's not all bad.
Johnny looked a bit sad. He must have truly cared about Elvira. Yet, Elvira was still hung up on a guy she liked in the past. This issue was deeper than I had imagined and would lead to an unexpected situation. After we started dating, Elvira constantly questioned my actions. She would come to my room and stay until she got an answer that satisfied her.
So, what else? Well, there's nothing else.
Like, did you go to a hotel or something?
I don't know about that.
This was my small act of defiance. After that, Elvira calmed down. A year had passed since Norman and I started dating. On my birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
This is your birthday present from me.
What?
In the small box he handed me was a beautiful ring. Is this?
I want you to marry me. I'm so happy. Of course, I will.
I promise to make you happy. I was over the moon when I accepted his proposal. Not only because I could be with Norman, but also because I could finally leave my parents' house. I contained my excitement as we visited both families. First, we went to meet Norman's parents, and they welcomed me warmly. The problem was my family. So, Dana is finally getting married.
I'm welcoming Norman.
Thank you. Even my usually indifferent parents seemed genuinely happy. But Elvira didn't stay quiet.
What? You're not going to live here?
Elvira, what are you talking about? You and Johnny are living here. We don't have any more rooms, so it's impossible.
Then we can remodel. There are always ways. Don't be unreasonable. We can't do that.
Elvira's desperation was unusual. But this was exactly what I had aimed for. After that, Elvira tried desperately to keep me at home.
Enough already. It's not for us to say. Stay out of this. You.
Even Johnny seemed taken aback by Elvira's outburst.
Anyway, we're looking for our own place. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, we'll be finding a house of our own.
If that's what you've decided, then go ahead. Thank you. I wouldn't forget Elvira's frustrated face when we left home. Finally, I had some peace. We found a small house to rent in the next town over for a bargain price. I never imagined that being with someone I loved could make me this happy. Though we lived apart, we gathered at my parents' place for holidays like summer and Christmas. It had only been a few months, but I felt a bit nervous being away for the first time. I'm home.
Welcome back. It's good to see you.
Yeah, where's Sis?
Oh, Elvira went shopping.
Lori, it's been a while.
You look good, Norman.
Come on in. As soon as we sat on the living room couch, they brought out an overwhelming amount of snacks and treats. No way I can eat all this.
Come on, it's been a while.
Well, it's only been a few months. Don't be shy. Up until now, Elvira had always been the priority, so I never expected such a warm welcome. Just then, Elvira and Johnny returned from shopping. Oh, Dana's here. Long time no see. I greeted them, but Elvira ignored me and went straight to the kitchen. Norman, long time no see. Have you gained some weight?
No, it's just that Dana's cooking is too good.
Well, you look happy, and that's what matters.
Thanks to her.
The family gathered, enjoying coffee and conversation. However, Elvira, usually so talkative, was unusually quiet today. We spent about an hour together when Mom noticed something. By the way, did you get the usual cake from the bakery near the station? Oh, I forgot. Come on, get it together. But we don't really need it.
What are you talking about? We do this every year. What are we going to do now? Can we still make it?
At this point, Norman raised his hand. Okay, I'll go get it. I drove here today, so it won't be a problem.
But I feel bad.
No, please let me do this. Sorry, I'll be right back. All right. As Norman prepared to leave, Elvira suddenly decided to go with him.
It's my fault for forgetting, and besides, Norman doesn't know what to get. Come on, let's go.
Elvira tugged at Norman's arm as they left. Watching them go, Dad sighed deeply.
What's wrong?
She hasn't been herself lately.
Her memory's been bad, and she just seems unmotivated overall.
Elvira, who was once doted on, now seemed to be a burden. Even her husband, Johnny, looked a bit worn out. It seemed that since I left home, my and Elvira's roles had reversed. An indescribably awkward atmosphere settled over us. The bakery was only a 10-minute drive away. It shouldn't have taken this long. Mom was the first to notice.
They're taking a long time, aren't they?
Yeah, it's been over an hour. A sense of unease crept over me. They finally returned about 30 minutes later.
You're back late. The traffic was bad. Did you get the cake?
Yeah, here it is. Mom took the bag from Elvira and checked its contents. But then she froze.
What is this?
It's what you asked for. Where did you go? This is completely wrong.
I can understand Norman making a mistake, but you were with him.
Forget it. Mom looked exhausted.
Does it really matter?
I heard her mutter under her breath. Elvira's hair was messier than when she left. I watched her closely. Johnny seemed to notice too. Our eyes met. He seemed to have something to say to me. What a mess. The atmosphere was tense, despite the family being together. How did things get this way? The rest of the summer break passed in this awkward tension. When we got home, I felt all the accumulated fatigue hit me. I fell asleep on the couch, only to be awakened by Norman's voice on the phone. What? Don't worry. She won't notice. I called out to him.
Who are you talking to?
Then, Norman looked at me with a surprised expression. He ended the call and came over to me. You're awake.
Who was that?
A colleague from work.
You seemed quite friendly for just a colleague.
As I pressed him, I could feel his irritation growing. There's no point in lying. What are you getting at?
Nothing.
Realizing this wasn't going anywhere, I tried to end the conversation, but Norman grabbed my arm and wouldn't let go.
Are you doubting me? Tell me.
Norman's eyes, usually so calm, were now filled with a strange intensity.
You're hurting me.
Let go! Then stop doubting me. I'll do as you say. He finally let go of my arm. Looking at my arm, I saw the clear marks he left. From that moment, I began to fear Norman. 2 months later, I received a call from Mom and headed to the hospital. Dad had fallen down the stairs at home and broken a bone. Are you okay? Yeah, somehow. I heard you fell. I did something really stupid. A few months later, Dad was discharged from the hospital, but he still needed family support at home until he fully recovered. I felt relieved that Johnny was there too, but unfortunately, he was scheduled for a 2-month business trip. The family gathered at the house that day. I'm sorry to leave you all at such a time. It's unavoidable. Do your best. Yes. But what should I do? My back is bad too. Then Norman interrupted and volunteered to support Dad. I'll take care of Darren. Are you sure? You have work and other responsibilities. I can't come every day, but I can make it on weekends. But you're newlyweds, right? Dana won't mind, right? Well, having another man around will be helpful. Let's do that. But, do you not care what happens to Dad? I didn't say that. Realizing this conversation was going nowhere, I accepted Norman's offer. Not knowing it was the beginning of a nightmare. Every Saturday, Norman started going to my parents' house. At the same time, I began to notice a sweet smell coming from him. I couldn't ignore it. Do you smell something sweet? Do you think so? Like perfume. Perfume. I could see Norman's face distort. I was sure he was hiding something. I kept questioning him. It feels like I've smelled it somewhere before. Where could it be? I asked pointedly. You're imagining things. Do you really not know? You're being annoying. I don't know any women's perfume. I didn't miss that statement. I didn't say it was women's, so how did you know? Sweet scents are usually women's perfumes. A harsh excuse. Tell me what you know. At that moment, something whizzed past my face. I turned around, trembling. A shattered mug lay on the floor. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I sat down on the spot. It didn't hit me, but the thought of it hitting my face made my hands shake. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was an instant reaction. I didn't know what to say. I remembered the fear I had felt before. From that moment on, I couldn't speak up against Norman. My state of mind returned to normal with a single phone call. Dad's condition improved, and although he was still a bit awkward, he was able to walk without crutches. It was during a call that I heard about his progress. How are you feeling? Much better. That's good to hear. How's Norman? He's been a great help. Very considerate. Hearing that made me feel a bit relieved. By the way, Johnny wants your contact information. Is it okay if I give it to him? That's fine, but why does he need it? We hadn't exchanged contact information. Maybe it was just a matter of timing. Johnny contacted me later that night. Sorry for the sudden message. It's okay. You're coming back soon, right? Yeah, in about 2 weeks. Got it. So, the reason I asked for your contact information. Johnny began explaining. What do you mean by that? I've been curious for a while. I haven't been able to say anything until now. To be honest, I was curious too. So you felt the same way. I'm sorry. I just didn't know what to do. That's the thing. Then I'll keep an eye on them too. I should be the one doing it, but I'm not nearby. I'll let you know if I find out anything. Thanks. I appreciate it.
I felt a bit relieved that Johnny and I were on the same page. I couldn't just do nothing at this point. I decided to investigate Norman's actions closely. I hired someone to look into it and waited for the results. I wanted to resolve it before Johnny came back.
Huh? What do you mean by that?
I had asked for about a week's worth of investigation, but nothing suspicious came up. During the weekdays, he went to work and came home as usual. On weekends, he went to his parents' house in the morning to take care of Dad and came back at night. I reported these findings to Johnny.
So that's how it is. Was it just a misunderstanding?
Maybe.
There's nothing wrong, but it still feels weird.
I get that.
It's frustrating when you've gone through all this effort. I think it's because we were suspicious from the start.
We decided to continue our lives as usual, reassured that nothing was wrong. Johnny would be back in a week. 2 days later, Dad was able to take care of himself, and Norman's support was no longer needed.
Thanks for everything.
Yeah, no problem.
You don't look too happy.
It's nothing. His words didn't match his expression. A week passed without any significant changes. On Saturday afternoon, I got a call from my parents.
Sorry, but could you come over? Sure, but why? I need to ask you something.
Got it. I immediately informed Norman.
My parents asked me to come over, so I'm going.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, that's that.
Okay. Take your time.
Yeah.
He seemed to smile happily. There was a forecast for heavy snow today. Why did they have to ask me to come on a day like this? When I arrived at my parents' house, they greeted me together. It's cold. So, what's up?
Well, sit down first.
We ended up chatting about various things.
By the way, where's Sis?
Elvira went out to meet friends before you came.
What? On a day like this? But what is it you want to ask? What was it, Lori? I don't know. What was it?
What's this? If there's nothing, I'm going home.
You've come all this way. Stay a little longer.
At this point, my parents seemed desperate to keep me from leaving. Time passed, and soon it was already past 5 p.m. It's really coming down. You might not be able to get home. Maybe you should call Norman.
Huh?
I mean, look. You might not be able to make it home.
All right, I'll do that.
I called Norman just like Dad suggested. Norman said it couldn't be helped and quickly hung up. But I felt a strange uneasiness. When I called earlier, it sounded like Norman was somewhere else. Once I thought about it, I couldn't stop worrying.
Sorry, but I have to go home.
I see. Well, be careful.
Yeah.
Outside, there was already about 2 inches of snow. Shivering from the cold, I hurried home. I'm back. The moment I opened the front door, I noticed something was off. I saw a coat that clearly wasn't mine. I immediately realized he had brought a woman over. Then I heard voices coming from the bedroom upstairs, so I headed straight for the door. Wait a minute. You're being too rough.
You like it this way, don't you? She never does this for you, right?
Don't say that.
Call me by my name. Like you always do.
At this point, I realized Norman's partner was Elvira. Anger surged within me, and I had to pinch myself to stay calm. I needed to calm down first. I took out my smartphone and started recording their conversation. I never imagined the other woman would be Elvira. Their voices echoed throughout the house as they continued. But why are we at this house today?
Because it's more exciting this way, and we haven't seen each other lately.
That's true, but we always used to meet at your parents' place.
We've been careful not to get caught. Well, she's so oblivious she never noticed. That's true. She would never think we're doing something like this. She's such a fool. Now I understood why I hadn't realized their relationship sooner. I never thought they'd meet at their parents' place. Even though I suspected them, I convinced myself they wouldn't do such a thing with my parents around. That's why even when I hired someone to investigate, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Still, I continued recording, thinking it would serve as evidence. I kept imagining how both sets of parents would react when they heard this. It was the only thing keeping me sane. I was about to burst in, but my feet wouldn't move. Why? If I went in, I'd see them in the middle of their act. Maybe I just couldn't bear to see that. Hey! When will you give me a child? No, that's too risky. Your husband will find out. It'll be fine. We can do it later and he won't notice. He's clueless. You're a terrible wife. You're worse. Besides, he won't be back until tomorrow. It's going to get harder to meet, so let's enjoy it. All right. Hearing this kind of conversation made my head hurt and nauseated me. I was at my limit. So I decided to call out to Norman. Where are you? Realizing my presence, they panicked and I heard a window open. They were probably trying to hide on the balcony. But that was the worst thing they could do. Ah, they've really messed up now. I slowly entered the room and looked around, noticing that the clothes scattered around were still there, just as they had been discarded. It seemed they had gone outside completely naked. When I looked outside, I saw them crouched down in a small corner, trying not to be seen. I immediately locked the door. Then, I began to think about what kind of punishment I should give. Maybe I should leave them like this for a while. I left the bedroom and went downstairs. I headed to the kitchen and slowly brewed a cup of coffee. After making the coffee, I returned to the bedroom. I sipped my coffee while looking toward the balcony. The cold must have been too much because they started banging on the window. Open the door! I'm going to freeze out here! Of course, I ignored those desperate cries. Then, a great idea came to me. I picked up my smartphone and made a call. First, to my parents and then to my in-laws. I told them it was an emergency and managed to get them to come over. The last call was to Johnny. He was supposed to come back today. Perfect timing. I was about to call you too. Really? Are you at home by any chance? Yes, I am, but... Since you called, something must be up, right? Yes, actually. I didn't want to spoil the surprise by explaining everything now. So I should come over to your place? Yes, to my house. I'm actually at the station now, so I'll head over right away. See you soon. Now, all the key players were on their way. But I couldn't help but be curious about Johnny's reaction. It was as if he already knew what was going on. There was no point in overthinking it, so I decided to wait for everyone to arrive. Both sets of parents arrived first, and I asked them to wait in the living room. About 10 minutes later, Johnny arrived. Sorry I'm late. The snow made the roads terrible. No problem. Please come in. With everyone gathered in the living room, it was time to reveal everything. So, what happened? You said it was an emergency, so we rushed here in this snow. Yes, you need to explain what's going on. It's about the two who aren't here. It's understandable that Elvira is missing, but where's Norman? Exactly. So, please follow me. I led everyone upstairs to the bedroom. What the hell is this? Look over there. I pointed to the balcony, where two naked figures were staring back at us. What is going on?
I realized leaving them out there could be life-threatening, so I unlocked the door. I thought I was going to die.
Please give us something warm.
I tossed blankets to the two of them.
You're going to explain this, right?
Dad looked furious, on the verge of hitting someone.
They were having an affair.
Elvira looked up, shocked to see Johnny.
What are you doing here?
I came back from my trip today.
That's impossible. You told me you were coming back tomorrow.
I was told today. And clearly, Johnny was here. My head was spinning. Then Johnny started to explain.
I predicted this would happen and made plans accordingly. Lying to you was part of it.
Johnny looked at me. Sorry, I had to use Dana as well.
What?
Johnny said he had also asked his parents for help. That's why they suddenly told me to come home. Dad trying to hold me back was also under Johnny's orders.
So they knew about the relationship between you two?
No, it was just a guess. Even when you reported it, I couldn't quite believe it.
I'm sorry. I never imagined anything like that would happen at home.
Now that I think about it, when Dad broke his leg and needed care, he was the first to volunteer. Well, enough explanation. Let's think about what to do with these two idiots who fell into the trap. The two of them just looked down and didn't say anything. So I decided to let everyone listen to the recording. If you don't want to talk, I'll make you.
What are you planning to do?
This. When I played the recording, the voices of the two of them echoed through the bedroom. Just hearing it was enough to understand what they were doing.
Stop it! You're not in a position to say that.
Listen to the end. Everyone in the room's gaze turned to one of contempt.
You've got to be kidding me. You're no longer part of this family.
Maybe it was a mistake to pour love into you.
Don't ever show your face again.
So there. Norman looked like he was about to cry, but my in-laws desperately apologized to Dad and me. I never thought she was such a woman. I knew you were still hung up on Norman. But I truly loved you.
I felt the same way. Hey! Who said you could talk?
Johnny's eyes were filled with hatred. It was so terrifying, it almost made me cry. So, what are we going to do with you two? What do you think? Well, divorce is certain. And compensation too.
Then maybe we'll just throw you out again?
Hearing that, the two of them showed their last resistance.
It was your fault for always being busy with work and ignoring me.
That's not a reason to cheat. If you want to argue, be more logical. You'll prove you're an idiot. Actually, you already have. Elvira couldn't say anything.
Got anything to say, monkey?
I was just led on by Elvira.
Are you really going to blame me? You were into it too. You invited me to the hotel that time.
That time? When we went shopping together. Oh. I remembered something like that happening during the summer vacation. Everything must have started from there.
Lastly, why did you involve Norman?
Seeing you so happy irritated me. Even though you were always too shy around men.
So you were frustrated because you lost the guy you liked back then?
That's right. How stupid.
There's no value in such a monkey. You should face reality.
I couldn't help but laugh. Enough. If we keep associating with these people, we'll end up as fools too. Let's go, everyone.
Wait!
Don't talk to me so casually. We slowly closed the bedroom door. The snow outside was getting heavier. We couldn't stay here, so we headed to the nearest relative's house. On the way, I kept wondering what would happen to the two who had been abandoned by their families. My in-laws stayed over at my parents' house and left the next day. At that time, they apologized again and declared that Norman would live as a stranger from now on. Shall we go then? Yes. We went together to discuss the divorce and alimony. Since we had the recording data, the procedure was not too difficult. We were able to get divorced quickly and decided to claim alimony as well. And today is the day Johnny is leaving my parents' house. Thank you for everything so far. You were like a son to us. It's going to be lonely without you. That's true. If only you two could have gotten married. Please, stop it. As we were enjoying this pleasant moment, those two showed up. And Norman, for some reason, had shaved his head. I couldn't help but laugh, thinking it was a silly attempt to show remorse. What are you here for? Then, they both deeply apologized. Our parents abandoned us. You are the only one we can rely on now. Please.
I told you never to show your face again.
Dad is right. And we are already divorced.
That means we are strangers.
So hurry up and leave. But they still didn't give up.
It's annoying that you keep doing this.
Stop embarrassing yourself. I can't watch this any longer. Then Johnny extended his hand to Elvira.
Will you help us?
I watched nervously.
Help? What are you misunderstanding? I just wanted you to move out of the way because you are in the way.
Seeing Elvira's stunned face, I struggled to hold back my laughter. My stomach hurt from it. So, that's the deal. You'd better leave.
Dad seems to be reaching his limit.
Dad stood with his arms crossed, blocking the way like a devil. And for some reason, he seemed proud. Seeing that, the two of them left in a hurry.
Finally, they are gone. Well, I guess I'll be going too.
Feel free to visit whenever you like. Since then, I've been living with my parents. And I keep in touch with Johnny, and sometimes we go out for drinks. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm sure it will be a fun one.
For Zoe's birthday present, please send $500 in cash. It would be great if you could transfer the money to me electronically. Isn't it amazing how we can easily send money using our smartphones without even leaving the house? We live in such convenient times. I'm so glad you didn't have to go through any trouble for this, Sadie.
I was stunned when Margaret requested cash for Zoe's 5th birthday present. Apparently, it was Zoe's own wish since she has a passion for saving money. Ever since then, I've been sending cash for Zoe's birthdays and school entrance celebrations. Margaret, Zoe's mother, always seems delighted, but I couldn't help but wonder if Zoe truly wanted the money. One day, when Zoe came to visit with her family, she invited me to draw with her.
Grandma, let's draw together.
She didn't seem to be enjoying herself, frantically sliding the crayon across the paper. What she drew were stick figures and 6 circles. It wasn't skillful or cute. I was at a loss for words.
What is this supposed to be?
Ghosts. Although it looked like a random drawing by a child, there was an eerie feeling to it. This picture held a bone-chilling meaning. I'm Sadie, 62 years old. My husband passed away 5 years ago, and I now live alone in a house in the countryside. Less than an hour's drive away, my only son lives with his wife and child. They used to visit me once every month or two, but recently, I only get to see them once a year. It's because my son, Tarek, has been on an overseas assignment since last year. I have a good relationship with my daughter-in-law, Margaret, but I understand it must be tiring for her to visit her in-laws without Tarek.
A delicious steakhouse opened up near my place. Would you like to go eat there together?
About 6 months after Tarek left for his assignment, I called Margaret and tried inviting her. Margaret's voice instantly lit up.
Wow, steak. Yes. I'd love to, but...
However, her words trailed off vaguely. I have plans every weekend this month, Next month?
I'm booked solid on weekends too. What a shame. I'm so sorry, Sadie, even though you kindly invited me.
Margaret sounded apologetic. If that's the case, I won't push it. Zoe, my granddaughter, turned 3 and started attending preschool, so they must be busy. But even after that, Margaret kept dodging my invitations without giving a clear answer, and I couldn't seem to meet her and Zoe no matter what. When I told Margaret I wanted to deliver Zoe's birthday present in person, she asked me to mail it instead. I'm booked every weekend this month too. I'm so sorry. Sadie, it's totally fine if you could just send the present. When Tarek's overseas assignment was decided, I wanted to support Margaret, who would be raising Zoe alone, in any way I could. But I couldn't even meet them face to face. Rather, realizing that my attempts to contact them might be a bother, I decided to cheer on Margaret, who was raising Zoe alone, from the sidelines. Tarek returns home once a year, and during that time, the family of 3 visits my house together. I always look forward to that one day each year. One day, as Zoe's 5th birthday was approaching, I received a call from Margaret. It was probably about a birthday present request. I had always fulfilled their requests, so Zoe was undoubtedly delighted. Last year, I gifted her a sky blue bicycle and a stuffed animal from a popular cartoon. I was excited to see what Zoe, now turning 5, would be interested in.
So about Zoe's birthday this year.
Just as I thought, a present request. I waited for her to continue, my heart swelling with anticipation.
Zoe seems to want money instead of toys. Huh? Money? Yes, isn't Zoe quite the oddball?
Margaret laughed as if troubled.
She has a hobby of saving money. So, for this year's present, please give her cash. I'm sorry, Sadie.
Giving a 5-year-old cash as a present feels somewhat lackluster. But if saving is her hobby, it can't be helped. I understand. Zoe is quite mature, isn't she? It must be because of your great parenting, Margaret.
Oh no, not at all.
Margaret is friendly and cheerful. She must treat the young Zoe with straightforward kindness too. Well then, would around $100 be good for her allowance? By the way, does Zoe still like that character? I was thinking of sending some merchandise or something as a present too. I asked casually. Instantly, Margaret raised her voice.
Huh? She doesn't need that.
Her voice sounded somewhat irritated, making me gasp. I was puzzled, unable to believe it was coming from the always smiling Margaret.
Oh, she's already over that character. She doesn't need any stuff, so $500 in cash is fine. Don't worry about it.
Her voice quickly returned to the usual cheerful Margaret. She must be troubled to receive character goods she's not interested in. While reflecting on my own thoughtlessness, something caught my attention.
$500?
Isn't that too much for a 5-year-old's birthday present?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. I'd feel bad having you go out of your way to visit a toy store and buy this and that for her. You can just transfer the money to me electronically. Isn't it amazing how we can easily send money using smartphones these days? How convenient. I'm so glad it won't be a burden on you, Sadie.
Hearing her say it so brightly, I swallowed my thoughts. Transferring money easily with a smartphone. It's certainly convenient, but it's a bit sad that this is a birthday present. Zoe, who seems to be growing up to be quite responsible, became a senior in preschool. It feels like she just started school the other day, but children really do grow up so fast. As soon as she became a senior, Margaret contacted me again.
Oh, Sadie? How have you been? You haven't caught a cold or anything, right?
Margaret is a considerate woman. I'm happy to hear from her every once in a while. Yes, I'm doing just fine. Are you and Zoe doing well?
Yes, we're totally fine, thanks to you. Oh, and Sadie, I actually contacted you today because I have a favor to ask.
With a slight hesitation, Margaret brought it up.
I was thinking it would be wonderful if Zoe could get a backpack as a present from you, Sadie.
Oh, Zoe's backpack. Of course, I'd love to give her one as a present. Oh, that's great. Zoe will be so happy. Zoe is my one and only adorable granddaughter. Of course, I want to give her a backpack as a present. I didn't know they were considering buying one from the start of Zoe's senior year in preschool, and I regretted making Margaret say something difficult. Then, I'll come over there. Can you help me pick out a backpack? Oh, well. Margaret faltered, giving me a bad feeling. We're buying it from a long-established bag maker, so we need to make a reservation. It's not like we can just go to the backpack section of a department store. So, there's really no need for you to come all the way out here, Sadie. I'm so glad it won't be a burden on you. Margaret's house is just under an hour's drive away. I don't think it's a burden in the slightest. But Margaret is being considerate of me, her mother-in-law. I can't selfishly ask the overly kind Margaret to make time for me. So, about the backpack, could I ask $4.200? What? I'm sorry, it's expensive, isn't it? But this is normal for backpacks these days. When I last saw the backpack section, I felt the going rate was around $50, but if we're ordering from a long-established bag maker, it wouldn't be strange for it to exceed $150. Even so, $200 is. I want Zoe to use a good one and cherish it for a long time. Please, a present from grandmother. While there are many daughters-in-law who keep their distance from their mothers-in-law, Margaret honestly relies on me. I believed our relationship was good. However, during that year's Christmas break, I harbored an unshakable doubt for the first time. Tarek temporarily returned home, and the family came to visit me. Zoe, you're about to be an elementary school student. Did you get the backpack you wanted? Yeah. I got a pink backpack from a girl in the neighborhood, but I wanted a light blue one. When I asked casually, Zoe's face clouded over. Margaret hurriedly tried to smooth things over. That's not it, Sadie. The backpack we reserved just hasn't arrived yet. A middle school girl in the neighborhood happened to have a backpack that was still in pristine condition, so we just accepted it as a spare. What? But Mom, you told me to settle for the pink one. Zoe started to say something, but then shut her mouth. I couldn't see Margaret's face as she looked down at Zoe, but seeing Zoe's awkward expression made my heart ache. Before I knew it, the new year had begun, and Zoe was already an elementary school student. In a photo sent from Tarek's smartphone, Zoe was wearing a pink backpack. It seemed to be a photo Margaret had sent to Tarek from the entrance ceremony. What happened to the light blue backpack Zoe had wanted? I asked Margaret about it, but she only responded with a carefree, "It hasn't arrived yet. It's so troubling." Not sounding troubled at all. A small doubt began to spread in my heart. For Zoe's 6th and 7th birthdays, cash was specified again. But just cash is boring, so I mailed a set of fancy stationery. On the phone, Zoe's voice was so bright, I could tell she was excited. Thank you, Grandma. The pencils are so cute, just like my friends. It's something I really wanted. I'm going to take them to school. I felt relieved to hear her childlike excitement. When thanking me for the cash, it sounded like she was skillfully reciting a set phrase, completely different from her reaction to the stationery. Grandma, thank you for the allowance. She didn't get excited about the cash, speaking in a mechanical way. Had Zoe really outgrown childish characters? Was she a responsible child with no desire for material things and a hobby of saving money? If not, it would mean Margaret was lying. No way. That couldn't be. I caught myself doubting, but reconsidered that cash wasn't a bad thing. Not wanting to accumulate toys, disliking character goods. I've heard many parents think that way. Cash doesn't get in the way, and Margaret must be sensible. Finally, the long-awaited Christmas break arrived. As usual, Tarek temporarily returned home, and the family of 3 came to visit me. Margaret always remembered my favorite foods and never failed to bring a fruit salad as a gift.
Grandma, sorry for the intrusion. Have you been well? I've been looking forward to seeing you. A well-behaved daughter-in-law and a polite granddaughter. I was blessed with a wonderful family. But for some reason, Margaret and Zoe's smiles seemed fake. I told myself it was just awkwardness from only seeing each other once a year, creating emotional distance. I spent time with Zoe playing board games and cards I had prepared. When Zoe lost at Go Fish, I was surprised to see her grit her teeth and throw a tantrum. No. I don't want Grandma to win. I wanted to win. But what surprised me even more was that after saying just that, Zoe suddenly fell silent as if coming to her senses. Zoe glanced at Margaret, who was drinking coffee at the table behind her. Seeing Margaret paying no attention and fiddling with her smartphone, Zoe seemed relieved, as if a weight had been lifted from her chest. Zoe was only in first grade. It wouldn't be surprising if she cried out of frustration after losing a game. I'm sorry, Grandma. I'll do my best not to lose next time. She was a good kid, but somehow unnaturally so. Even when I gave her juice, Zoe glanced at Margaret before saying, "Thank you, Grandma. I'll have some." No matter what she did or when, it seemed like she was always checking Margaret's facial expression first. After dinner, Margaret and Tarek decided to go to the convenience store. Apparently, Margaret's period had unexpectedly started. Since he was going anyway, Tarek said he would also buy some beer. Margaret persistently tried to get Zoe to go with them, but Zoe holed up in the bathroom, saying, "My stomach kind of hurts." So Margaret and Tarek left together. "Grandma, did Mom and Dad leave?" Zoe immediately peeked out of the bathroom. I didn't even hear the sound of the toilet flushing. "They left. Did you want to go with them?" "No, it's okay." Zoe peered into my eyes as if she wanted to say something. "Is something wrong?" I bent down and asked, but Zoe bit her lip and looked away. Was it awkward for her to be alone with me, whom she rarely saw? As I worried, Zoe showed a smile. "Grandma, let's draw." Without waiting for my reply, Zoe took out a print with a white back and a pencil from her bag. She smoothly started drawing by herself. It was a picture of a girl. Black dot eyes and a horizontal line for a mouth. In other words, expressionless. Not only was there no ribbon in her hair, but her body was a mere stick figure. It was rough for a 7-year-old's drawing, and I didn't feel any cuteness. "Is this Zoe?" "Yeah. The last time we drew together, it wasn't this rough." She didn't seem to be enjoying it, frantically sliding the pencil as if in a hurry. When she finished drawing the stick figure, Zoe stared at me intently. It wasn't skillful or cute. I was at a loss for words. Zoe silently gripped the pencil again. "What is this?" Around the stick figure Zoe, there were 6 circles drawn. Those circles also had black dot eyes and a single line mouth. "Well, these kids are, ghosts." "Ghosts? I see. Are they Zoe's friends?" It looked like a random drawing by a 3-year-old, but it had a strange, eerie feeling. "They're not friends. These kids are my family." Zoe gave me a look as if testing me. Was it just the delusion of a young child? It seemed like it would be good to gently pat her head and say, "Oh, they're your family." But Zoe's direct gaze made me freeze. "Grandma." It seemed like she was trying to appeal to me. As I stared at the rough drawing, almost as if being sucked into it, a dark thought suddenly surfaced. Huh? Could this be? Could this drawing be Zoe's SOS? It's okay. Grandma is on your side, Zoe. If there's something troubling you, please tell Grandma. Zoe, who was always a polite, good girl, now glared at me with a guarded look, like a stray dog unaccustomed to people. I felt like I was being tested. I felt a sense of dread, but I never looked away from Zoe. And then, Zoe finally opened her mouth. "Grandma, help me." The moment she said those words, Zoe's eyes filled with tears. She seemed to have been trying to determine if I was an adult she could rely on. At 7 years old, she should have been innocent,
but it pained me to think that she had to be suspicious even of her own grandmother. Okay, I understand. Can you tell Grandma what happened? Zoe spoke while desperately holding back her overflowing tears. Mom has someone she likes other than Dad. But that person said they would drag Mom down to hell. That's why But Grandma, what should I do? Her voice choked up, and her words were sometimes broken. Still, she managed to convey the unbelievable truth to me.
No way, that's...
My tone inadvertently grew stronger. Zoe shrunk back. I'm sorry. Even though Zoe did nothing wrong, she cowered just because my voice got louder. The fact that she apologized on reflex made me realize that Zoe was not living a childlike life. I hugged the small Zoe tightly and reassured her, it's okay, it's okay. Zoe is a smart girl. After crying a little in my arms, she gently checked the clock on the wall and wiped her tears. Mom and Dad will be back soon. Having switched gears, as soon as Margaret and the others returned home, Zoe immediately crawled into her futon, saying,
I got sleepy. I got sleepy.
It was to hide her red, swollen eyes. Do you want to sleep with Grandma? I asked, wanting to hear more, but Margaret stopped me.
Oh, come on, Sadie. Zoe is already an elementary school student. It's embarrassing for her to sleep with Grandma.
She laughed and sought Zoe's agreement.
Right, Zoe? It's embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm an elementary school student, so I'll sleep alone. She seemed like a wonderful mom who understood Zoe well. I had believed that without a doubt until now. But now, for some reason, I felt a strong pressure from her. Come to think of it, Margaret was a bit overprotective and never left Zoe's side. Yet, she didn't seem interested in Zoe. I just felt like she was worried about Zoe saying anything unnecessary. The next day, even though she was next to Zoe and me while we were drawing, her eyes were glued to her smartphone, and she didn't say a word to us.
Zoe, you're good at drawing.
Thank you. I love drawing. We had occasional idle conversations like that, and before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. It meant that Margaret had been looking only at her smartphone for 2 hours without paying attention to Zoe. I was surprised at how quickly time had flown by, but I felt an indescribably unpleasant emotion, not quite surprise or anger, at Margaret's attitude of being so naturally indifferent to Zoe. But it was convenient for me to spend time with Zoe at a leisurely pace. By the way, I had asked Tarek to run an errand, so he was out. Zoe and I turned our backs to Margaret and filled sheet after sheet of white paper with drawings. Tarek and the others were planning to stay one more night, but apparently, Tarek had to return to his post urgently. They hurriedly left my house. Grandma, see you again. Zoe waved her hand modestly. Margaret's face seemed to say she was lucky to be able to cut the troublesome visit short. Oh, what a shame. I wanted to enjoy more of Sadie's delicious cooking.
Margaret, you're good at flattery.
Oh, stop it. It's not flattery at all. Margaret really has a way with words. If I hadn't had that conversation with Zoe, I would have still believed Margaret was a good person. But now her smile seems cheap, like a mask. I swore to myself that I would absolutely tear off that mask. With a beaming smile, I saw Tarek and the others off. Zoe looked back anxiously, but she didn't need to worry. We would see each other again soon. The next day, just past noon, Tarek apparently headed to the airport alone. The only ones left in their apartment were Margaret and Zoe.
Zoe, Mommy's friend is coming over to play today. He's a very important friend, so you'd better be on your best behavior, okay?
Margaret seemed to be in high spirits, visible through a certain screen. She was busy fixing her appearance, curling her hair and reapplying mascara. After a while, the intercom rang. Margaret ran to the front door without checking who the visitor was.
I've been waiting for you.
She greeted her so-called friend with a voice full of delight. As soon as her male friend Carl entered the room, he leered at Zoe with a sleazy grin. Zoe, let's get along well, okay? Zoe glared at the man with defiant eyes. The man maintained his smile and pretended to be her friend in an exaggerated manner. Zoe, don't make such a scary face. I'm your mommy's friend, you know? Let's have some fun together. He approached Zoe with a gentle tone. But his voice suddenly dropped low, threatening Zoe.
How long are you going to keep making that face? If you don't try hard, your mommy will fall into hell, you know? Do you understand? You'll be the one pushing your mommy down.
Zoe's body trembled slightly. So, shall we play together?
Isn't that great, Zoe? Go play with Carl. Oh, wait, $300 up front. Ha, you don't miss a thing.
I couldn't stay silent and watch anymore. I pushed open the closet door where I had been hiding and ran into the living room where Zoe was waiting.
What are we playing? Let Grandma join in too.
Zoe was sitting with her knees hugged to her chest, as if protecting herself. As soon as she saw me, her tense expression softened, and she ran over to me. Margaret couldn't grasp the situation and could only look back and forth between Carl and me in bewilderment.
Huh? What? Why?
It was only natural for her to be surprised when her mother-in-law, who shouldn't have been there, suddenly appeared in her home. Margaret seemed to be simply dumbfounded, not even feeling anger yet.
Who's this old hag? I'm not an old hag. I'm Zoe's grandmother. Now, mister, what shall we play? House. Drawing, perhaps?
The man took a step back, distancing himself from me. He was perplexed by the intrusion of a seemingly crazy old woman. I embraced the shoulders of Zoe, who was clinging to my legs, and gave her the gentlest smile I could muster. Then I raised my gaze and instantly wiped the smile off my face. I leaned in close to Carl's face and stared into his eyes with a piercing gaze.
Or were you planning to involve a child in adult games?
I took out a few sheets of paper from the bag I was holding. They were densely filled with writing. While visiting my home, Zoe and I pretended to be drawing, but we were actually conversing through writing the entire time. Zoe had been telling me about her situation through written words. Margaret never peeked in and asked, "What kind of picture are you drawing?" So Zoe and I conversed earnestly through writing. We didn't have a chance to be alone, but as long as we didn't make a sound, we wouldn't get caught. I relentlessly confronted the bewildered Margaret and the man, paying no heed to their confusion.
Zoe told me that she was threatened, saying if she didn't play with this man, her mom would go to hell. Even though he said play, Zoe could sense it wasn't going to be pure, innocent play, even if she didn't fully understand. So she was scared and didn't want to play, but if she didn't play with him, her mom would suffer a terrible fate. Carrying this unknown terror, Zoe had been worrying all this time. Margaret, can you explain in detail what this is about?
Margaret's eyes darted all over, up, down, left, and right, desperately seeking an excuse. Her usual aura of being a good person was gone. She stuttered out a response.
Huh? No, I mean, it's just normal playing house, right? You'll go to hell if you don't play house? What? Oh, no, I don't remember saying anything like that. I mean, is Zoe telling some weird lie or something?
Margaret tried to play dumb. First of all, the very fact that I was here meant there was no way I would let her make excuses.
By the way, I've been in this house for the past few hours. I've been listening the whole time. Watching the whole time.
As I slowly informed her, Margaret turned pale. No matter if I was her mother-in-law, it must have been terrifying to find out I had intruded without her knowledge.
That's a lie. There's no way.
Margaret looked frightened, as if she were the victim, but she was by no means a victim.
The one who's unbelievable is you. After Tarek left the house, you were on the phone with this man, right? I heard that too.
Margaret and Carl furrowed their brows and looked at each other. I quietly urged Zoe to go to another room. The clever Zoe silently obeyed. Now I could corner them without holding back.
You were planning to sell Zoe for $300, weren't you? I don't know anything about that.
Margaret hastily denied it. so I fired back without missing a beat.
I have a recording. What?
Immediately after seeing off Tarek, who was returning to his overseas post, Margaret gleefully started making a phone call. The contents were so cruel, it made me want to cover my ears. Even without listening to the recording, Margaret's voice replayed in my head.
Hey, Tarek went back overseas. Come by Zoe right away. You'll give me the $300, right? You promise? This will pay off my debt, right? Oh, and don't get serious with a kid, okay? I'm the one you really want, right?
A mom selling her own daughter to pay off debts. Witnessing that nearly made me stop breathing. I had to suppress the urge to rush out immediately and save Zoe. And so, I had waited for this moment when she couldn't make excuses. I pointed to Margaret's pocket.
The envelope in your pocket. What's inside?
An envelope she had hurriedly stuffed into her pocket when I appeared. It was handed to Margaret by the man. I happened to be checking the contents at the time, so I could see several $100 bills peeking out.
Huh? I don't know.
It was impossible for her to feign ignorance. I sighed and informed her again.
I have a recording, and I was also filming, you know? What?
Feeling dizzy, Margaret staggered on her feet. I would never forgive Margaret for making Zoe suffer. Tears streamed down Margaret's cheeks as she held her head in her hands. She started to plead, shedding tears little by little.
Sadie, it's not what you think. No, I was wrong. I'm sorry. The truth is, I have debts, so I had no choice but to offer up Zoe. I really made a mistake. I'm sorry.
Realizing she couldn't deceive me anymore, Margaret tried to win me over with tears. The one she should be apologizing to wasn't me, but Zoe. She probably just wanted to sweep this painful situation under the rug.
The debts, what did you rack them up for? Like brand name stuff?
I took a look around the room. There were no visible brand name items, and neither the room nor Margaret herself seemed very flashy.
Tell me the truth. Well, you see,
Margaret stammered. As I waited for a response, a voice rang out from behind me. It's for hospital bills. It was Zoe. She stood straight, with a resolute expression on her face. I had made her wait in another room, but she must have been eavesdropping. Unable to hold back any longer, she had rushed out. It's for hospital bills, right, Mom? Zoe and I locked our eyes on Margaret, not letting her out of our sight. Margaret's face contorted in anguish, and her legs trembled slightly. Eventually, she stomped on the floor loudly with her right foot. I embraced Zoe, whose body had stiffened, shielding her.
Ugh, fine. It's for hospital bills, so what? They're hospital bills, so it can't be helped. Then, Sadie, if you think Zoe is so pitiful, why don't you pay the $300? Whenever I ask you for money, you always seem reluctant. That's why I had no choice but to sell Zoe. It's your fault for being stingy.
Margaret's true nature was revealed. The mom who had been agonizing over whether she should sacrifice Zoe to protect herself screamed in a shrill voice like a child throwing a tantrum. Zoe silently watched her mom's ugly behavior.
The money I gave you for Zoe's birthdays and backpack, you were using it for yourself after all. Is it so wrong for a parent to manage the money? It is wrong.
I clearly stated to Margaret, who was brazenly joking around. Margaret, who had been grinning hatefully, shut her mouth.
If you had told me from the start that it was for hospital bills, I would have given you the money. But you were going to the hospital for a reason you couldn't honestly say, right?
This time, Margaret sulked and didn't say a word. She was more childish than 7-year-old Zoe. Living thoughtlessly, following her own desires, had she become completely selfish?
The hospital, it was an OB/GYN clinic, wasn't it? To erase the life growing in your belly.
The stick figure and 6 circles Zoe had drawn. The 6 circles represented the lives that had disappeared. If I had seen that drawing and felt nothing or gotten angry, I think Zoe would have kept her mouth shut. Because I tried to understand what it meant and to know Zoe's feelings, she acknowledged me as an adult she could trust and rely on. Grandma, they're my little brothers and sisters. You can't see them, but they haven't disappeared. That's right. I'm sorry, Zoe. Zoe turned to face Margaret and quietly asked, "Don't tell me that if I'm not a good girl, Mom will go to hell to be with my little brothers?" In fact, it seems Margaret had been leaving Zoe behind and going out to have fun on a regular basis. Taking advantage of Tarek's overseas assignment, she had been fully enjoying the single life. She would only return home in the morning or evening to give Zoe a boxed lunch or cup noodles. But Margaret had a good public image, so she properly participated in school events, and their family was not recognized as having problems. While Margaret was mostly out like this, there were times when she would stay home for about a week. At those times, I was happy to have Mom with me all the time, but Mom was in really bad shape and irritable. When I tried to approach her to talk, she said, "I'm tired from just giving birth to your little brother or sister." She said it costs a lot of money to have a baby. So, when I asked where the baby was, Zoe bit her lip. I had heard before how Margaret answered at that time. "Who knows? In hell, I guess." When Zoe told me this, she couldn't hold back her tears and let them overflow. She had been stifling her voice so Margaret wouldn't notice, playing around casually and treating the life she was blessed with carelessly for selfish reasons. It's not a forgivable act. Moreover, according to Zoe, this had happened 6 times.
Mom, I may not be a good girl right now, but please don't say that I will go to hell to be with my little brothers there. I really hate that. Because my little brothers aren't in hell.
Clenching her small fists, Zoe desperately pleaded. And then, she screamed with all her might.
If you want to go to hell, go by yourself, Mom.
The obedient Zoe had rebelled for the first time. Margaret staggered backward as if she had been hit in the head.
Zoe! I am your mom. Don't talk to me that way.
I know. My friends' moms stay at home, make meals for them, and chat with them. Some moms are busy with work, but none of them are busy getting friendly with men like you. Only 7 years old, Zoe, a first grader, was thinking much more like an adult than Margaret.
Huh? Don't mess with me.
Margaret's eyes narrowed, rapidly filling with hatred. She vigorously raised her fist, with veins popping out. Or so I thought, but Margaret's arm dropped limply. Eventually, all the strength drained from her body, and she slumped down onto the floor.
Tarek! Why are you here?
When I turned around, Tarek was standing behind me. Margaret had abruptly lost her momentum when she noticed him.
You're supposed to be gone. Wait, this isn't making any sense. Why are you here?
Tarek said to the confused Margaret in a flat voice.
Is it weird for me to be in my own home? More importantly, isn't it weirder for a strange man to be here?
Carl, who had been called a strange man, had completely blended into the background, so he jumped up in surprise.
What were you planning to do with Zoe?
Even when spoken to, Carl still pretended to be part of the background and held his breath. He didn't pick a fight or try to run away. He seemed quite timid.
If you don't want to answer, that's fine. You can tell the rest to the police. What? Why are you surprised? You tried to buy a 7-year-old child for $300, didn't you?
The man mumbled.
Well, it was just an attempt.
While stammering, Tarek strode up to Carl and grabbed him by the collar.
I don't want to hear excuses. Get lost.
If Tarek hadn't been grabbing his collar, the man's legs were shaking so much he wouldn't have been able to stand. The sound of the front door opening was heard, and 2 police officers barged in unceremoniously. The man was arrested on the spot. His legs were frozen, and he couldn't walk, so the police officers grabbed him by both arms and took him away like a captured alien.
Why the police? Did you call them? Why is this happening?
Tarek explained to the bewildered Margaret, with a terribly cold expression.
It was a lie that I had to suddenly return to my post. After hearing about Zoe from Mom, I deliberately left the house empty to confirm the truth.
Although Zoe, a child, may not have had a definite grasp of the facts, it didn't seem like a lie or misunderstanding. When I secretly told Tarek, he said he actually had some suspicions. Sometimes Margaret would withdraw $2,000 or $3,000 from savings at once, and when he tried to video call, she almost never answered. Zoe didn't consult Tarek because Margaret had been telling her,
"Don't tell Dad or the teacher about what happens at home."
"That's not true. I was just deceived by Carl. I was actually protecting Zoe." "Really?" "I was going to try my best to only let him take a few photos." Margaret clung weakly to Tarek. Even seeing Margaret's tears, Tarek was completely unmoved. On the contrary, he openly showed his disgust and looked down on Margaret.
"I didn't know Margaret was such a foolish human being."
"I just told you earlier. Did you already forget? I said I was recording audio and video." I pointed to the smartphone propped up on the shelf in the living room. Tarek had set up one he used to use in advance. By connecting it to a video call, Tarek and I could check the interior in real time. Of course, we were also recording video.
"I heard you on the phone with that man too. You said he could do whatever he wanted with Zoe." "Oh, no, that's not true."
First of all, I couldn't have waited inside the house without Tarek's cooperation. Margaret let out a voiceless, She reached out to Tarek but was strongly brushed off. Undeterred, she turned her hand toward Zoe. However, even Zoe avoided her with a sharp look. Abandoned by her family, Margaret pursed her lips and looked up at the heavens. Then, the police officers from earlier returned. The hand that her family wouldn't hold was taken by the police officer.
"Huh? Why are the police taking me?" "Margaret, you did something that required the police's attention too."
She had tried to make a child do something inappropriate. Even if it ended in an attempt, it was unforgivable.
"Huh, why, no, Zoe."
As Margaret was being taken away by the police, Zoe asked, "Mom, are you going to hell?"
"What? No, I don't want to go to hell."
The police officers tightly restrained Margaret, who had started making a commotion, and dragged her away without mercy.
"No! Let me go! I don't want to go!"
Margaret was making a huge fuss like a disobedient child. Eventually, her voice faded away, and when I looked outside, the police car had driven off. I later heard that Margaret had indeed been cheating, feeling like she was single. Thinking Tarek, who was on an overseas assignment, would never find out, she had been boldly playing around and apparently had repeated unwanted pregnancies. Since the incident with Zoe ended in an attempt, Margaret and the man were given a suspended prosecution. The man wasn't serious about Margaret, but he thought it was rather lucky when she occasionally got pregnant. He would have her examined by a doctor he knew, overcharge her more than the going rate, and he could receive kickbacks.
"That's why I was never really serious from the bottom of my heart. It was just for fun. I'm so sorry."
The deeper the man's apology, the more miserable Margaret seemed. On the other hand, Margaret and Tarek got divorced. She cried and protested, but someone who tries to sell their daughter has no right to refuse. Contact with Zoe was also prohibited. At the time of the arrest, she had been screaming and crying so much that someone must have filmed it, and without our knowledge, she had become a topic on social media as the wailing old hag. Even though we never spread rumors, somehow not only Margaret's name but also the reason for her arrest had spread. The internet world is scary. After the divorce, Margaret tried to come and contact Zoe, but the neighbors immediately reported her, so nothing came of it. I heard rumors that Margaret felt like she was constantly being watched both in the online world and in the real world, and she had become terribly self-conscious and was suffering from mental instability. Since Tarek had to return overseas, I took care of Zoe for a while. As if the long time we couldn't see each other had been a lie, Zoe and I got along well and had endless conversations.
You know this happened and then this happened. See? Grandma.
Zoe kept talking, her words overflowing, sometimes saying incoherent things. Maybe she wasn't as level-headed as I thought. But even the chatty Zoe was childlike and adorable. After a while, Zoe left to go overseas to Tarek's post. The lively and fun times passed in the blink of an eye, and the room I surveyed felt spacious. About 3 months after Zoe had gone overseas, a letter arrived in the mailbox. It was from Zoe. Surprisingly, it was written in French. I pulled out a dusty French-English dictionary and took my time reading the letter. Although there were some mistakes here and there, I was happy to see that Zoe was also working hard overseas.
That's it. I'll learn French. It would be so much fun to be able to chat with Zoe in French.
Even in my 60s, it seems I can still find things I want to do and dreams to pursue.
When I can speak French, I'll go visit Tarek and surprise him.
With a goal in mind, the little loneliness that had remained in my heart quietly disappeared. Right now, I'm imagining a bright future, my heart swelling with anticipation.